BL1 Wario. Bullshit. You my bum no. I said bum no. I said bum no. I said bum no. Times two. Oh! Kill yourself. Yeah, I do know what you're talking about. Fucking hell, the man is clean my desk. I cleaned it in a week. It's cleaning time? Mm-hmm. Cleaning day. Stop pretending you can avoid it. You can't.
I mean, mistrusting of science, and because of that, they just kind of live in their own world and just deny everything until it happens to them, and all of a sudden they're like, oh no, it's happening to me, now we have to do something about it, right? Which I think you guys all know what I'm talking about. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? About how that, like, that situation, yeah. So this book is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. I would read this over and over again. I could have highlighted everything, to be honest. There's no moment of this book that is extraneous, that could be edited out. There is no moment where I said, oh, maybe he should explain this more, or this doesn't feel right. No, this book is perfection. It's flawless. And I know that this, and like, it makes me feel better about when I read the book Trouble with Lichen, because Trouble with Lichen was a book that I loved the idea so much, but I thought he really failed on his execution, and I thought that book, John Wyndham, lost track of what he was trying to say with that book. And because of that, I didn't think it was good. Like, some people say it's really good, but I'm like, no, I think he kind of lost track of the plot. And so when I read this, I'm like, yeah, I wasn't wrong about that book, because this book is flawless. It's absolutely flawless. He knew where he was taking this book, and he brought us there. And it's, as again I said, it's terrifying. And this book was just fantastic. It's just a must read. So there you go. That was my excellent February reading month. I killed it. I think I killed it. So I don't think you could do better. I don't, because every book got certain emotions out of me. It did exactly what I wanted it to do when I read them. I got shocking societal commentary. I got thrilling emotions. I got calm, beautiful, buttery writing. I got humor. I got to laugh. I got to be whimsical with a little girl, and I got to see the terrors of aliens invading the earth. And I think all of it was so good, and it was so much fun.
I need to remember that I played Squares for a reason.
There was one more. There was a book that I was almost done by the end of February. There was one more book, and I wanted to finish it so hard, because that book, I'm telling you, the author of that book, she is my great discovery of 2026. I am obsessed with her. I want to read everything she's written. I have downloaded everything. The hint, she's out of print. That's my hint to you of who she is. She's out of print. You can't buy her books. So I downloaded everything from Project Gutenberg, and I hope to read at least 2 or 3 of her books this year. She's my, like, I wanted so hard to finish that book in February, not to be like, I read 8 books, I read 10 books, you know, not to be like one of those, like that. No, that's not the point. It's just the fact that I want to talk about her so soon with you guys, and it's gonna have to wait another month till the end of March, which sucks. You're gonna have to wait, but I'm really excited because, oh my, I'm, you know how like everyone, like the influencers say I'm obsessed. I don't think I've said that word once on my channel yet, and I'm gonna say it. I'm obsessed with the author that I'm going to introduce you in the month of March, because
no, she said it.
She's a hero. So yeah, there we go. I'm like I said, I'm having a killer reading year so far. I'm so excited. The reading mojo is in me. I want to read everything I touch, and I'm having fun with everything I am reading. I'm so excited, and I'm so happy I get to share that with you guys. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this very long video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I was decently coherent in my thoughts. Like, I'm kind of mad about the Kraken Wakes. The thing with the Kraken Wakes was that, like, everything was so phenomenal that I just kept reading, and I didn't take any notes. But I could, like I said, I could have made a note on every single page. There's so much in this book that you can talk about. That, like, so it sucks that my review became so basic, because the book is not basic. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. All right, we're gonna end it here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.
There's a problem with no spoilers, because I'll use your own discretion to say something about the book instead of just saying it's great. That's what you can say. You can only say that. You can only say the basic blurb of the book, and then not expand on anything past that by talking about particular plot elements and things that happen in the plot in a sort of vague way that, you know, sort of tells you, okay, well, this is what happens in the book. I wanted to see more of that, rather than, oh, it's a good book, but I can't, okay, spoiler culture has just destroyed every conversation about anything, because we can't possibly know what's going to be the content of this book. And therefore, what's the point of that? It's looking at Uncharted 2, it's looking at Romeo and Juliet and going, oh, in medias res? Ah, spoiler. It's a shit engagement, I think. I know it's a shit engagement. Double insta, yeah, that's some clown. You give me 4 drops. Fucking double insta. Kill yourself. Cozy Japanese books. Yeah, I'm good, boss. What was that last book she talked about though?
Marvelous way with creating. It's so good. Oh, Kraken wakes depending on.
Kraken wakes. Okay.
Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. It has been a while and I'm not too sure how to really start the video or how to talk about everything that I want to talk about today. But we're just going to do with what we can.
Wait, I didn't get it?
I've been gone because my grandmother was hospitalized and she did end up passing. Now, my grandmother was 102 years old, so we've been...
My great-grandma died out 101.
For a while now, and that's why I've been going to France so many times. Instead of going home to the US for my vacations, I've been going to France every time, knowing that every time I go see her that this could be the last goodbye, and summer basically did end up being the last goodbye to go see her. So I mean,
should have let them out.
We've been prepared for this, but
let them out know.
No matter how you prepare for something, it's especially for something like this,
no.
You never know how you're going to react, and I'm a very sensitive person, especially since there's the added part where because I am single and all my family is not in Japan where I am, I always have to I have to deal with these kind of things by myself. And because I've been single for so long, basically every major life event lately I've had to deal with it myself, and it's hard. It's very difficult because
I've never been in a relationship, so I have no idea how it's like to have somebody else there. I'm not sure if I would ever want to have another person there. The mono. But it's not the lack of confrontation, because I'm 100% confrontational. Let don't my shit alone. That makes the most sense. I couldn't even imagine somebody else being there. So what does that look like?
Anyone there to give me any sort of emotional support. So I've just been doing what everybody else does. I think just Instagramming, like looking at Instagram all the time, just trying to calm the brain. So it's not good, but for me,
what
because I
the
don't
fuck?
have emotional support here in Japan, that's pretty much the only thing I can do. So I haven't been doing anything but just scrolling on Instagram and then watching movies. I have been watching a lot of movies. But like the additional thing is also the fact that I injured myself climbing, I think at the beginning of April now. And I basically injured the ulnar nerve, which is the nerve that connects your elbow to your little finger and your pinky finger and your ring finger. And I did that on my left hand. And so a nerve injury is terrible because those very often are not healable, and they will become aggravated every time you re-injure it. However, because it was a minor injury and it's the first time I injure it, like right now it could heal if I'm careful. So that means I had to stop climbing, and then I had to pull way back on my violin practicing. So this is devastating for the violin. So it sucks. So with my grandmother passing, I didn't have. That was another thing that usually I would have to fall back on. I would have my violin I could fall back on. I could have my climbing I could fall back on. Especially with climbing. Climbing is so social. I have a lot of friends I can do that with. And I was climbing, 3 to 4 times a week. And so having that social aspect gone and having, something to focus on, like the violin, really just made the situation worse. It just made me not know what to do, because especially since I'm much better when I'm active. I'm a very social person. Most readers tend to be considered as introverts, but I'm not. I'm definitely an extrovert. I like being surrounded by people. If I could be surrounded by people 24/7 and never had to read again, I would be perfectly fine with that, because for me, human interaction is just very important. It just makes sense that that's what we should be doing. So that's why I've been gone, and that's just why I've been gone. I tried filming some videos in the meantime, but I didn't have the energy. I didn't have the motivation. Whenever I tried, it just never really worked. It didn't feel right. So that's why I haven't had the March wrap up. That's why I didn't do there was the video I wanted to talk to you guys about my major discovery in 2026, like the author that I'm absolutely obsessed with, and I still will do those things at a certain point. But I thought today's video would be an easy way for me to ease in, because I'm going to talk to you guys about sort of where I left off with my reading and where I'm at right now and where I want to go with my reading. So right now I am in the middle of Golden Week. Golden Week is a term we use here in Japan for in the very beginning of the month of April, and sometimes like the end of beginning of the month of May, and sometimes the very end of April. There are 4 federal holidays that hit all at once, and they're connected oftentimes, and so it's a huge moment in Japan for people to just go on vacation. So this time the federal holiday was particularly great because there was a federal holiday on Wednesday, and then the next 3 federal holidays fall on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So you could take the Thursday and Friday off of both sides of the week, and you could have like a 12-day holiday if you wanted to do that. So it's super, super major. I originally had plans for Golden Week, but those plans, I have friends that if I don't plan everything, nothing happens, and I just ended up never making those plans. I initially planned on doing some domestic traveling to, I was planning on going to the Ogasawara Islands, particularly Chichijima and Hahajima, which are islands that are technically, it's interesting, they're actually part of Tokyo Prefecture, but the only way to access them is via a 24-hour ferry, like a boat. That's the only way you can access them. So it's one of those things where, like, if you go to those islands, you actually need to take a week because of the timing of the ferries, and just the limited access forces you already to lose 2 days just to travel, 2 full 24-hour periods just to travel. So it was something I had mentioned to my friends I wanted to do back in like October, but then I had to plan the end of the year travel with my mom, and then I had to plan our ski trip, because again, if I don't plan the ski trip, nothing happens. So it was just a lot, and I was getting tired of planning things. So it just my work does actually give us extra holidays, because they always say, you guys work so hard, we want you guys to have more holidays. So I have the first Thursday, Friday off. So I have like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
So why you turned on my bag?
Work next Thursday, or the Thursday after you see this video. But I just have no plans. Nothing's happening. It's already Friday when I'm filming this. So Wednesday, I ended up having lunch and walking around with a friend of mine, and then a friend of hers that she invited. He was very, very nice to talk to. I'm really glad she invited him. And then yesterday, because regular people are still at work, but I was off, I took that opportunity to take care of going around and grabbing all the documentation I need for my permanent residency application, where permanent residency in Japan is basically the equivalent of having your green card in the US. So I've decided to finally do my PR application, because the new prime minister is quite aggressive against foreigners here quite aggressive in policy for foreigners here in Japan. And so a lot of us are making the rush to get our PRs, because she's like quadrupling, not quadrupling, let's see, PR application fees up to now like 8,000 yen, and she's bumping that up to 200,000 yen. So what was the equivalent of $80, she's bumping it up to $2,000. So it's not like I can't afford that, but between paying 80 and 2,000, obviously I want to pay the 80. So a lot of us are rushing to get our PR before that takes all those new policies go into effect, and before she changes anything else to make the process more difficult. So yesterday, I made the rounds and went to the prefectural office. I had to go to the pension office, and then I had to go to the tax office. And it actually only took me 2 hours, because The one benefit of being single in Japan and aiming for your PR is that the documentation is very, very easy. Also the benefit that I've been with the same company this entire time. So I had no hiccups. I got everything done in 2 hours. It was very easy. The only thing I have to do now is write my little essay, and then I can go to the immigration office post Golden Week to send all of that off. So yeah, I'm very lucky that my PR application was quite easy. Some people have it much more difficult. So yeah, that's the life update of everything I've been doing. But yeah, so Wednesday and Thursday have already gone past. Friday right now it's like 3 p.m. It was super gloomy. It's been raining. The weather's been awful, absolutely awful. Finally seeing blue skies. So I'd like to make an effort to go a little bit outside and not just rot in my apartment like I have been doing. But so here's the thing. So it's Friday afternoon. I still have Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I have like 5 full days and then 1 like half day, whatever it is. And because I'm not doing anything, I wanted to treat this Golden Week kind of like when I go on my beach vacation. So typically towards the end of the vacation period, so like my vacation days renew in June. So usually as June approaches, I have some remaining vacation days, like 4 or 5 days, and up till now, typically I've been using them to go to the beach, to just have a beach vacation by myself where no one bothers me and I just read like a book every day. This year I'm not doing that because my family kind of needs me back in the US, so I will be going back to the US instead. So for this Golden Week, I'm going to try and do what I usually do on those beach vacations. Now, the weather's not great, and I'm not on the beach, so it'll make things more difficult, especially since I'm not good about reading in my home. So, but hopefully, maybe having a goal like this will help me out. So I wanted to build a TBR of books that I could try and get through during this Golden Week period.
Run out of points.
Let me tell you. Well, you know what? Let me tell you first what I left off. What I was reading when I before I got sad and couldn't do anything anymore. I was reading Comanche Moon by Leary McMurtry. I was very happy about what I was reading. I was on page 85 when I left off. This book was absolutely gorgeous. I do want to get back to this, but it was not the time to be reading it. So I did put this down. And then I had tried starting the new Jim Crow.
I didn't even get it.
Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander. I'm super excited about reading this, but again, this is just not the time. So I read about, I read the introduction, and then I started reading a little bit of chapter 1. All of this is like preface stuff that I'll read once I'm done with the book, but just not the time to be reading this, so I did put this down as well. And then the other book I was reading Madame Bovary by Flaubert. This one actually is still progressing because, gosh, sorry, I'm just looking at the sun damage. You can see like the line right here, just because this bookcase actually gets more sun than I thought I did. So I've been getting like sun damage. But anyway, this one is actually has been my at work read. So this actually has been progressing. I'm on the part 3 of the book. And so I should be actually finishing this the week I come back to work. Because I actually don't have that much left of it. So this was still progressing, but everything else.
La papana.
Another book I was reading that I'd started was Soudain j'ai entendu la voix de l'eau. Suddenly I heard the voice from the water by Kawakami Hiromi, where the original title is Suise. So this book is a Japanese book translated into the French, and this is an author that surprisingly I have, well, no, actually, not surprisingly, it's just a book an author hadn't picked up yet. But she wasn't a Kutagawa Prize winner, and I own her Kutagawa Prize winning book in Japanese. But I thought I would start with this. But to be honest, I'm really bored with this. I don't think it's that good. I'm page 116 out of 250, pretty much almost halfway through. And this is a struggle. I might just DNF it entirely because I haven't been I don't think this has been a situation type, like bored because of my mental status. I think it's just a boring book in general. So I'll probably abandon this. But that's where I was when everything was happening and whatnot. Now, last Sunday, I had gone to this Buddhist temple.
Oh my god!
It's quite out in the outskirts. Technically, it's part of Tokyo, but it still took 2 hours to get there because you have to take a long train because it's really out of the way. It's like really the outskirts of Tokyo, and then you have to take a bus. And I went there to go see the azaleas because the azaleas are blooming right now, and it's really famous for the azaleas, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I did a mini vlog of me going there. Maybe I'll still post it. I don't know. Again, like I said, I've been trying to film things, but it's just not been very, very exciting. But so we'll see if I post that. But it was really, really gorgeous. And the thing is that I had, again, 2 hours there, 2 hours back of transportation time. And typically I read very well on the train. So I had decided to not read this on that train, not to bring it because I've been bored with this and I thought it'd be a waste. And instead I picked up this book, Six Fourmis Blanches, 6 White Ants by Sandrine Colette. Because she kind of writes like more on the thriller side. Her books are much more page turning, but they're quite, they still have a little bit of, I don't want to say they're still an intellectual property to them, but there's definitely a little bit of elevation that for me makes it a little bit more interesting. and this was a good idea. I read.
Why would I
just
kill the lost?
because I had so much. It was just I was pulled into it, and it was really easy to read just with the white noise that comes when you ride a train. So since then, I've only made 100 extra pages of progress, but I'm only 60 pages from the end, so I could finish this in one reading if I just stick with it. So that's my goal for today, for Friday, to finish this book. Okay. Oh, like I said, this video is kind of over, but this is on my TBR to finish for today for Golden Week. This is also in front of my face. I just realized I forgot to mention another thing I abandoned when I got sad was I had started reading a new soccer manga. This is Sayonara Deshi no Kurama.
I liked how she said sad and not depressed.
I've been really curious about girls manga since up to now I've only read manga with men or like boys teams. But I totally forgot I was reading this. In my studies. This has been on the back burner as well. Like I only have 5 minutes of reading left in this book, and I just never finished it. So this is on the back burner. I'll have to come back to it later when I feel a sneeze coming on. But okay. All right, so let's get into like my TBR and what I think I want to do. So again, finish that book that I just mentioned, and currently right now on my online on the online reading website that I'm part of called Library Thing. I'm not on Goodreads. I'm not on the other ones, but I'm on Library Thing, and I love Library Thing, and I've always been part of it. I've been there for a very long time. I'm part of the community, and we this quarter, the second quarter of the year, is the theme that we are going for is Francophone reading. So any book written in French, but not limited to France, as long as it's a Francophone country. And I kind of wanted to kind of go through the books on my title that I've always been interested in, but because I tend to focus more on France when it comes to Francophone countries, I just never get to these. So there are a few books here that I could get to this Golden Week that I could either start reading, try reading. Some I could get through in a day, I think. It just really depends. So let me tell you what those are. Starting off with Le Crime du Comte.
What does that happen?
Count Neville's Crime by Amélie Nothomb. Amélie Nothomb is an author I've read many books from. I think I've read 27 books of hers now. I've read. She is definitely a read in an hour type of author. I used to love her, but I think with the last 3 books, I was getting kind of tired of her. And the last book I read by her, I said, I think I'm done reading her books. She publishes one a year, but I said, I think I'm done reading her, but I still have 2 more of her books on my TBR pile. So I think once I finish those, I won't buy any more. So this is one of those books. I think it's only 150 pages. I think it's going to be perfect for my mental state because her books are very easy to read. Sometimes they have some humor that can be quite delightful, some dark satire, some good wordplay. So I think this would be a good one to have in my Golden Week TBR. So this one's quite realistic that I read. Then this one, Golden Week, it's longer. It's 360 pages, and the text is kind of small, so I don't see it as a book I could finish. But in the month of April,
how did I not get the board on?
We are doing a group read where we read a novel by Marguerite Yourcenar, who is a French author I've actually never read before, but I'm very curious to read. And this book, which I don't know the title in English because it's not a direct translation of the French title, it's an entirely different title they go with. But I am supposed to be reading this either in April or May. I have to confirm which month it was.
What the?
But it might be a good idea for me to start this book so I can get to it.
I'm getting very lucky with
it.
it.
Up to anything. There's this book where I don't remember what it's about. Because it's a copy, so it's the old mass market paperbacks from the 60s that don't have any blurbs on them. And it's one of those books I picked up for €1 at a flea market. But the title was so good. It's Les Saints vont en enfer, so Saints go to hell, by Gilbert Cisbron. And yeah, just from the title, Saints go to hell. It sounded really good. I want to say it's a World War I.
Bloody hell.
No, I have no idea. But this book definitely intrigues me. And I like the idea of reading someone like that is an author I don't know. I know nothing about. It was a total just cover and title buy at the flea market. So I like the idea of just discovering something entirely new. Then we have a very classic in the French world that is Le Nœud de Vipère, which means the Viper's Nest by François Mauriac. I don't remember what this is about. Most of these books I don't remember what they're about. But this is a classic in France that everyone pretty much reads in school. It's kind of like reading
bloody hell.
What's that really annoying book with main character Holden Caulfield? Catcher in the Rye. Now you know how I feel about that book. Yeah, it's kind of like reading Catcher in the Rye in school. Everyone's pretty much read this. And it's a book, François Mauriac again, it's an author I've never read, and I am trying to catch up with my cousins with what they've read in school growing up since I didn't grow up in France. So this is potential. Then my mom had, when we saw this at the Philippe Market, she told me, we have to get this one because you need to read it. It's Le Passage, The Passage by Jean Reverzy. And she told me that this is a gorgeous book, an absolutely gorgeous book, about a, let's see, I'm just going to translate the blurb as I go. At 40 years old, in realization of his upcoming death, Jean Reverzy, who was a doctor, writes about his return from Oceania in this book. So he was, my mom says it was a beautiful book about exploring
Jesus,
the
I'm playing
life
fast.
and death, and the fact that it takes place in Polynesia sounds really, really delightful and wonderful and interesting and fascinating. So this book sounds quite interesting as well.
Fucking
So
Wario.
that's an option. This one's less of an option because I realize it's really big. Again, this font is really small. Yeah, the font is quite tiny and it is 650 pages, but that is Voyage au bout de la nuit by Céline. Very, very famous book. My mom, again, tells me I've always needed to read this. This one I don't see it's going to be my Golden Week TBR, but for my Francophone TBR, it's a possibility it could happen. This one, though, I really would love to read Le Chercheur d'Or, which is the Prospector by
As if there were more though.
Luc Lizio is a book
There
that
weren't.
is an author that oh my, I have so many cousins who hate this author, but I adore him. I think his writing is absolutely stunning and beautiful. The way he describes landscape and passages, and then the trials that his characters go through, and the mix of those two together are just absolutely stunning. And so I think this one could be really, really gorgeous. And this one, to go
No
with the
boards?
theme, this doesn't
No boards? Question mark?
Luc Lizio is a French author, it
I
doesn't
might
take
like
place
no
in France,
boards.
So it'll be interesting as
Fuck
well
the full
because,
boards.
a setting that is not from mainland France. So this one's interesting. Another classic in the Francophone, not genre, but in the Francophone sphere, is Texaco by Patrick Chamoiseau. This is so famous. My mom's been trying to get me to read this for like over 20 years. This is like gorgeous. I tried reading it once, and I thought it was a little bit difficult for the mindset that I had at that time. I don't think this is going to be a Golden Week read. Look at this blurb. Look how tiny the font is on this. It's ridiculous. The font's just so small. But Texaco takes place in Martinique. And this is just a classic of Martinique literature, so the idea of reading this would be fantastic. But not a Golden Week read for sure, because this is going to take like a month for me to read. But for the Francophone kind of TBR, it'd be nice to read this finally. But an actual Golden Week possibility that I think, because it's short and I like for my beach. So as I said, I want to do like my Golden Week TBR kind of like when I go on my beach vacations, which my beach vacations I tend to expect myself reading a book a day. It's very possible for me when I have nothing else to do. I'm capable of reading a book a day. I just don't do it in real life. But this is L'Intérieur de la Nuit, the Interior of the Night by Leonora Miano, and this takes place in West Africa. And I don't know.
The fuck is West Africa? That's like me saying fucking Western Europe. It took place in Western Europe. What the fuck does that mean? Western Europe? Is that France, Germany?
Along with finishing.
Well, why does Africa always get the respect? Disrespect. It's like I'm in Southeast Asia. So what the fuck? Yeah, just say Indonesia or Malaysia or Taiwan, I guess. Maybe.
So if I can start
probably gonna say Taiwan.
This would be perfect. Like, oh my goodness, so happy with myself. Very, very, that'd be amazing. So that's kind of like what I'm feeling. Also, the days are long, so I have one additional objective, but this one's less likely because I have not been so consistent about reading in Japanese. But I did pick up this book recently. I actually picked up 2 books recently that obviously you don't know about. Let me grab the other one real quick.
Yeah! I did scream! Why is this happening to me? It's around 16! Stop rewarding. You said stop rewarding. Why did you not follow through?
Definitely.
Come on now.
This was one of the
Follow through, pull through.
The Academy Prize. And I was obsessed with the idea of this one. First of all, this cover killed me when I first saw it. I'm like, what is this cover? It's so crazy. And this was before it was even nominated. It was I had already ever even nominated. And I was tempted to buy it back then, and I should have, because as soon as the Academy Prize was nominated and the winners were declared, it was impossible to find this book again. So when I did find it, I'm just going to buy it. But this book is about the protagonist. He kind of works in the equivalent of an Amazon warehouse.
Oh, fucking Wario.
Opening boxes.
Don't ever try and do that shit to me.
So this is a book that, because it's only 100 pages, I figured that during
I've graduated from a BL1 gangster to a BL1 Wario. Yeah, you see that popping?
But it would give
Plus, Stepho players would be fucking crazy.
Motivation and the energy and the desire
Saying, yo, you did that?
continue reading in Japanese.
Yeah, I did that.
Fantastic. So
I'll
the goal of this one isn't
no.
necessarily to read it in 1 week, although typically I should be able to read it in a week. That's not the goal. The goal is just to implant the desire to read in Japanese again. So yeah, that's what I'm aiming. Let me show you the other book that I bought that very same day, because I saw this and sorry, I keep playing with my hair because I don't know what to do with my hair lately. I haven't been happy with it. So I'm feeling whatever it is, ambivalent. But this is the other book I have to tell you. This is a non-fiction book. First of all, look at the presentation of this book. It's a yellow hardcover with this sort of like cover that doesn't cover the entire book. But I think it's just absolutely stunning. This is actually a reprint I discovered it's a second edition of this book. But let me tell you what it is. This is a nonfiction book about a Japanese man who decides that he wants to discover the small towns of America, right? Like the towns that no one knows about. So we're not talking, so definitely not New York City, San Francisco, none of those big cities. We're not even talking about Austin size. We're not even talking about Waco size. We're not even talking about Bastrop kind of size. Like I'm naming cities I know in Texas. We're talking about like population 15, right? Population like 30, population 50, like really like a below 100 people kind of population. And he goes across just middle America and he just writes about his experiences. So he goes to South Dakota to a city called Wall. He goes to a city called Springdale in New York. The city he chooses in Texas, where is it? Anthon, probably Anthon. He goes to that city. He goes to a city called Berzoni in Mississippi. So if you want to see these, if you can read Japanese, these are all the states and cities that he visits, or towns, I should say. And yeah, he just describes his experiences there. Now, I don't think it's going to go into any of the political nature of these Middletown America cities, as I do think Japanese authors tend to avoid talking about politics. But I think he'll just definitely go through just what a middle American kind of is and how he sees it from a Japanese point of view. Like, what's his experience with that? So I just thought it was absolutely fascinating. And this is not a read I'm going to read right now, but it's a book I knew that I absolutely needed to get my hands on. And I'm super excited about reading at some point. But I wanted to just introduce that to you guys because it's absolutely killer. Like, this is going to be so good. On the train after I read it, I had already read the introduction, the preface. And then I had read like little
that was 2 lines
that kind of stood out. And I'm like, yep, that sounds about right. Yeah. So I am pretty excited about reading this, although it's not a now kind of moment. But yeah, that's the update. I'm sorry to share such, have to show you guys me in a sort of sad state of my life. But and I'm not promising, going back to a working schedule anytime soon. So we'll see how things go. But yeah,
fuck out my window.
That's where we are. That's why I've been gone. That's what my reading has turned into, and that's kind of now we're gonna try and move forward, and we're going to try and regain that energy and regain the motivation and regain the sort of the sense of whimsy that I usually have. The weather's not helping. Like I said, today's the first time I see blue skies in a while, and I think the weather's changed. It was supposed to be like rainy and gloomy the entire going week. Now it seems to be going back to blue skies. So hopefully that's what stays, because I definitely need to see blue skies. And I'm just excited to not wear sweaters anymore. I'm from Texas. I need warm weather. I need heat. I need sun, and I need to be like a proper like good weather.
She does not sound Texan at all.
And then we hit rainy season on top of that. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be miserable. I'm gonna be so miserable. I guess I can update you on my injury for anyone who was like, oh, like what's going on? So the injury is doing better. Actually, just this morning I was like, wait a second, like I just realized like yesterday I had like no moment where I thought about it, and like even today I'm just like, oh yeah, like I injured myself. So I think like I have no more numbness in the pinky and my ring finger. Like the numbness went away about like a week and a half ago. Last week I was struggling like reaching my pinky towards my wrist. It felt like there'd be like a little pull or something here. It'd be like a little quick like electricity kind of twinge. And yeah, this morning I just realized that I don't feel anything like that. So that makes me very happy. Now my orchestra concert is not the weekend that you're seeing this video, but it is the following weekend that you see the video. So I do need to go back to practicing before that concert, because I have not been practicing for like a month. So I'm very, very like pulling the orchestra down. Like I feel really bad about that, and they don't even know. I haven't even told them that I was injured and that I haven't been practicing. So I'm sure they've noticed, and they're just like not. They're just too polite to say anything. Like, but yeah, I do need to practice, and so I am a little bit worried about the stress that's going to put on my hand. Obviously, I'm not going to force myself. If I feel like I'm hurting myself, I will stop. But I don't feel the pressure or the pain. If I can do 30 to like 50 minutes, like start off at 30 minutes, and if I can make it to 50 minutes per day, I think that'd be great. And then once the concert's done, I can like relax again and like sort of take some time off again to really make sure the injury's okay. But I am feeling quite confident that I've been doing everything that's right to make sure that this injury heals the first time around, and that I'm not like going back.
Oh my god, you can't even reload cancel, pussy.
And then it's become a
kill the boy.
Like, I think I've done really, really well. I do need to do more like exercise kind of rehab right now. I just need to rehab where like I rest entirely, but I do need to start doing like actual like exercises and like strengthening to make sure I can still do the movements without re-pulling something. So that's where we are with the injury as well. So feeling better about it, but yeah. So now I think I'm going to get dressed finally. I am kind of wearing a sweater because I'm wearing a shirt and no undergarments. So I need to get properly dressed, get out of these shorts, maybe walk outside for a little bit, enjoy the blue skies before nighttime comes in, and then I'll finish that book tonight. Right now, I'm definitely in the climax. I just hit a bit of information that changes everything. Where it's like, oh, because the thing about this book is like, so basically the plot is, to make this video go even longer. Basically, the plot is that you have two point of views going on in this book. So there's one point of view from a character called Lu, and she is in a group of hikers. They're amateurs, but they were able to be on this trip where they have a guide called Eagle, who's leading them to the mountains on a path, and then he'll bring them back, and it'll be a really great trip. So they're on that, but in the middle of their hike, the weather turns, and they get stuck in a bad snowstorm, and everything just becomes chaotic. And then the other perspective,
scary, interesting.
Matthias, and Matthias
That's scary, interesting.
is a man who lives in this village who still believes in these superstitions of the mountains, and to sort of ease the spirits of the mountain, they do sacrifices. And so his job is to sacrifice goats to the mountain to celebrate a marriage or a baptism or a child's birth, or to appease the spirits when someone dies. And he gets into trouble himself when a local bad man tells him to take his nephew as a protege. And so the book is sort of you wondering how these two perspectives interact, what's the relationship between those two, and how is the book going to end. So I just got to the point where I know what the interaction is between the two, and so now I can just go into the last climactic portion of the book, which is very exciting and makes books just speed right through, right? I'll be at the end in so quickly, so I'm very excited about that, and I think that'll be a great way to start things off. So yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being patient. Thanks to Joel for checking up on me, yeah, that's where we're at, and I will see you guys in my next video, whenever that is. All right, bye.
Fuck, I wanted to. I keep forgetting. Autopiloting. Got my manuscript open. All right.
Finish that book that I just mentioned, and currently right now on my online on the online reading website that I'm part of, called Library Thing. I'm not on Goodreads. I'm not on the other
Library thing. Library thing. It's a library thing.
Wake that ass up. Early in the morning. The Breakfast Club.
You wanted me to mess it up.
No. Big G.
He was saying and when, but it's on one, right?
And one.
And one.
Big G. And one.
That's what it is.
Welcome, fellas. How y'all feeling, man?
Man,
We good, baby. Thanks for having us, y'all.
Amazing, bro.
23 years,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Jordan number.
The Jordan year.
Lord have mercy. What does that mean to y'all when y'all hear that?
It's crazy to me because I always tell people, see, this is the first time in a minute we've been together and be doing an interview. But I always say, when I get interviewed, I don't care what none of y'all say. We didn't know what we was doing. We was shooting that motherfucker. All we was trying to see was whose call time was the next morning so we could go out and get something to drink, hang out for the night.
I mean, I was on a continuous from Oz, so I knew we had something special.
Okay,
I had picked that up.
Alright,
I had picked that up
okay.
already. Plus, it was the first time like I'm looking at people that's coming up that I was watching their work the same way they was watching my work. When I did Oz, everybody was already kind of famous already. You know what I'm saying? But when we got here, that made us, and I saw that work coming down.
But
Because
see,
I knew
the thing with me, nobody don't know, The Wire was my first job as an actor. So that was my first time I ever auditioned for a role, first job. So just being around these guys, I'm like, yo, I remember asking JD a whole bunch of questions, bro. What is a trailer? You know, what is Periscope? What are they telling me to do? Like rehearsal, I'm like, all right, but you know, like I said, man, to be here 23 years later and still just getting to it. You know, everybody healthy, living and breathing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's
I'm glad people find it new every day. Somebody find the show every day, so it don't really
The
age
show's
out.
more popular now, some years later than it was when it was on TV.
So none of y'all knew it was gonna be a cultural staple at Tough
I feel like it was. That's crazy. Never tell me that. I ain't know that.
From Baltimore, you damn right. It's definitely a cultural
Yeah,
staple.
but when you moving around anywhere in the world, though, they know you. You know what I mean? Like somebody might just stop and say, "Man, run them lines real quick." I mean, they throw you, and they quote your lines. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, you know, but it's like the study part of it. Like when I first came on set, Trey would tell you we was right there. We was at interest trailer. And we was running lines, and Trish was like, "What else you been on?" I was like, "This is my first time out."
Right.
He was like, "First time out where?" I say, "First time on the block." He's like, "On the block?" So we was shooting in a funeral home in Baltimore, like broad daylight funeral home, and we was there. A lot of people don't know the 12 hours. 12 hours, hard days, right?
Turn around, yeah.
Turn around. So we out there, we busting it, and we ran the lines. We were out there. It was raining. We take break for lunch. It was just a family, and we still a family to the day.
Yeah, man.
Now, I want to start from the beginning of The Wire. So when y'all got the call to do The Wire, break that down when y'all first read the script, and how did y'all know that y'all wanted to do it?
So I initially auditioned for Weebay.
See, that's funny.
I initially auditioned for Weebay's character, and I remember going in there with Pat Moran out there in Baltimore, and she like, "Yo, quote this monologue." So 2 weeks later, I get a call. She said, "Oh, we got some bad and good news." She said, "The bad news is you didn't get the character as Weebay, but you was cast for the character Poop." And I was only supposed to be in the first 2 episodes in the first season, and then spoiler alert, you end up getting Poop all 5 seasons, last man standing. You know what I'm saying? So I was just happy, you know, getting that script, and throughout the years, throughout the seasons, it never said I was getting killed. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the thing with The Wire. You never knew who was getting off. They didn't tell you before. They would just, you get the script and you read. That's like when Snoop shot at me. You know what I'm saying? They like Poop falls to the ground, he's bleeding. I'm like, okay, this is it. And then I woke up.
Take this into consideration, Trey, how you just said that. I don't know if y'all remember or not. The Wire almost ain't even take off. Because we auditioned before 9/11. 9/11 had happened, and shit was shut down for 3 weeks. At least I'm on Staten Island, so anything to Lower Manhattan, so that was Holland Tunnel, the ferry, and the Brooklyn Bridge and Manhattan Bridge was shut. You could only come in from GW or the Lincoln Tunnel. For 3 weeks, I was selling sneakers at the time, so I was just busting these moves back and forth. You know, over the what you call it. As soon as they opened up, but the thing is, the callbacks was after they opened the city back up. Alexa Fogel office started calling us back. I forgot all about this. True. I ain't think nothing. So when I went in, I auditioned for D'Angelo.
Oh wow! Shout out to Larry Jennings, man. That's our brother.
See, down there it was open because Baltimore was open. So actually, when I auditioned for Marlo Stanfield.
You auditioned
I auditioned for Marlo, and then when I got the call, they called me back. I was actually coming back from Houston with Steve Francis, and I got the call. Pat was like, "Hey, baby, you out?" And I said, "I got good news. And she was like, "You just landed Slim Charles on HBO," and that was it.
Not character one. Slim Charles.
Alexa told me,
character one. That ain't it.
she told me I was gonna be Bodie. Like I said, I wanted to audition for D'Angelo because I was like, I just came from playing a tough guy for all these years. Like, y'all gonna make me worse than I was already. And then she was like, no, this your part, read this part, just go and do your job. I went in, came out, and they built on the character so much I didn't know where it was gonna go. But I'm glad we did.
in here. So if you see her breathing hard, don't be on the internet talking about Snoop and on drugs and all that shit.
It's New York traffic, man. I had to get out of the traffic and start hardtailing, man.
All right, so you got out and just ran.
I ain't lying. I ain't want to hear your mouth.
How you feeling, Snoop?
I'm feeling blessed, black, and highly favored.
There you go. There you go.
Like it. What's up with y'all?
Try to let you get your breath.
That's all. Give you a minute. Give you a minute.
Give you a break. Snoop used to be out with me in the clubs all the time. Every night Snoop used to be out with me.
I ain't lying. That done cleared up now. I done got older, man. I only get 3 drinks and it's over.
This was a wrap?
It looked like I probably had a whole bottle and only had 2 shots.
I know you're here to talk about American Gangster Trap Queen, but I have to ask you about The Wire because it's been celebrating 23 years of The Wire.
That's been that long?
23 years? Yeah. You know, earlier this year we had Trey Chaney and who else was up here?
Brother?
A bunch of the brothers from The Wire was up here. Andrew Zubber was up here. What did The Wire mean to you? 23 years of The Wire.
The Wire meant everything because that's where I came from. That's where I started from. You know, I didn't know that I knew how to act or, I mean, just to be in this entertainment business, period. So, you know, The Wire just mean everything from, you know.
But for those that don't know, how did you get the role in The Wire? Like, break that down on how they chose you, your character and all that.
Yeah, because I know a couple of studs that auditioned, but they gave it to you.
Nah, that wasn't the case. Michael K. Williams, Mike, they didn't never have a part for me, so that's why you see Felicia Snoop Pearson on there. They kept my name and everything, even my nickname the same. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, I met Michael K. Williams. God bless the dead. I miss you. I love you, bro. I met him in Club 1. Remember Club 1? And he kept looking at me like I was, you know what I mean? Like I did something to him. So I never watched The Wire. While everybody was watching The Wire, I was outside, you know what I mean, hustling. So I seen him, and he kept looking at me. You know, looks could be deceiving. Right. He got a scar on his face, looking crazy. So I was like, man, what's going on? Yeah, I'm ready to go lay for yo outside. And my boy was like, nah, man, that's Omar, the gay person from off The Wire. And I was like, oh, word? I mean, so Mike came over there to me, and he was like, man, you're a boy or girl? And I was like, man, listen, I don't play like that. I love, you know what I mean? I say,
pussy,
yes, I love pussy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
don't play with me like that. Yeah. You be on your little gay jokes. But yeah, I told him I don't play that. No, he's like, nah. Like, I love your swag. I love everything about you. Yeah, man, give me your phone number. And I'm looking at him like, what? Phone number? Like, come on, man. But, you know, I gave it to him, and the rest was history. I went like a block away where they were shooting at, like, because I was living with my grandmother, you know what I'm saying, at the time, because me and my female friend was beefing, you know what I'm saying? So he was a block away. I was on Oliver and Marvin. She kicked me straight out. I was on Oliver and Marvin. He was on Marvin and Lanville. So that's a block away. I ran up there, and the rest was history. They, you know what I mean? They said they love how I talk, you know. See, my vocabulary wasn't like this at first. Everything was, yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? I was like, oh my God, I had to clean everything up. So, you know,
Then you was like in the street from what I've heard back in the day. You used to sell heroin.
Yes.
So you was really in the street. So you kind of got typecasted a little bit.
Yes, most definitely. That's why I did the Spike Lee joint, because I didn't want to be typecast. Spike hollered at me like, yo, I mean, come on, him and Mike and my god brother, like, come on, man. I played a prostitute.
Damn.
How did the streets accept you at that point, though? Did they be like, all right, Snoop, go do your thing, man. You don't need to be out here with us no more. And when did you realize you ain't had to do that shit?
Yeah, when did you quit?
I quit when I was on The Wire. I mean, I quit when my trap phone kept ringing, and then Ed Burns, David Simon, and, you know, Nina was like, yo, like, come on, stop. You know what I mean? Like, we want you. You is amazing. See, people, you don't see yourself what your worth is because it's you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then once they see, like, the outside person see you, and they let you know, you probably think they hating or, you know what I mean, whatever. But, you know, them people said that I was a star, man. I believed them. I just stopped. I promise you, I just stopped. But, you know what I mean, the last time when I got, you know what I mean, incarcerated, I was around people trying to keep it real. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't selling no drugs.
What is media literacy?
Big tough question. Right out of the gate.
That's a really big question. Gosh. Oh, God, wow. That's not an intimidating question at all.
It's big, eh? It's big.
I've wanted to make this video for a long time because there seems to be a general sense that people on the internet have terrible media literacy. It's like no one knows how to critically watch movies anymore, and everyone is falling for fake news or thinking AI-generated images are real. Especially in the video essay space, I think a lot of frustration and drama and misunderstandings come down to poor media literacy, and I've seen my fair share of that as a content creator. But then I had an idea. If I could make the perfect media literacy video essay teaching people how to engage more critically and open-mindedly with the stuff they consume, maybe I could fix YouTube. So with this extremely achievable goal in mind, I got to work. Given my background as an ex-English teacher who taught media literacy skills in my classes, I honestly thought that it would be relatively easy to make a video about this stuff. But as I started digging into things, I quickly learned it's so much more complicated than that. I was completely unprepared for how difficult this video would be. So today, I want to bring you along with me on this journey. I'll talk about why media literacy is so complicated, what people get wrong about it, and what we can do to fix it. It's gonna be a big one. There's gonna be some twists and turns. So if you're ready, let's get into it. When I decided to make a video about media literacy, the first thing I needed to do was to understand what media literacy even means. And this is harder than it sounds because while we talk about media literacy a lot, people rarely stop to actually define it. In tweets and articles and even video essays, people use the term to mean kind of anything. It's sort of become a catch-all for literary analysis, critical thinking, fact-checking, reading comprehension, or just having the right opinion on a piece of media. So my first step was to establish what media literacy actually is. And to do that, I turned to academic articles and textbooks because when in doubt, find experts and listen to them. But the thing is, The experts don't really seem to know what media literacy is either. I had such high hopes. I found all these great articles. I even got a couple textbooks that are aimed at teachers and students. I mean, this book is for middle schoolers. How could it not be straightforward? But to be honest, I hated these articles and textbooks. I mean, they're not that bad. It's hard to explain how academic resources can both say so much and nothing at all at the same time. Like, listen to this. Media literacy is the ability to apply critical thinking skills to the messages, signs, and symbols transmitted through mass media. Or, we define media literacy as the ability to decode media messages, including the systems in which they exist, assess the influence of those messages on thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and create media thoughtfully and conscientiously. Or, critical media literacy is about asking questions. Through CML, we not only explore what we know, but also ask how we know it. When practicing CML, we employ a collection of skills that help us move from being passive consumers of media to becoming engaged critics and creators. What does that mean? Like, I know what all those words mean, and I understand what those definitions are getting at,
Really?
but, like, what is critical thinking here? And
That didn't seem that hard to pass.
in which they exist, assess the influence of those messages on thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and create media thoughtfully and conscientiously. Or, critical media literacy is about asking questions. Through CML, we not only explore what we know, but also ask how we know it. When practicing CML, we employ a collection of skills that help us move from being passive consumers of media to becoming engaged critics and creators. What does that mean? Like, I know what all those words mean, and I understand what those definitions are getting at, but like,
Wasn't
what is
paying
critical
attention
thinking?
to that.
I decided to make a video about the two academic articles and textbooks because when in doubt, find experts and listen to them. But the thing is, the experts
Why
don't
am I
really seem to know what
lagging?
media literacy is either. I had such high hopes. I found all these great articles. I even got a couple textbooks that are aimed at teachers and students. I mean, this book is for middle schoolers. How could it not be straightforward? But to be honest, I hated these articles and textbooks. I mean, they're not that bad. It's hard to explain how academic resources can both say so much and nothing at all at the same time. Like, listen to this. Media literacy is the ability to apply critical thinking skills to the messages, signs, and symbols transmitted through mass media. Or, we define media literacy as the ability to decode media messages.
That was very plain. I'm sorry, that was very plain. Now, I could be really overshooting my shot. That sounded very plain. Decoding is decoding the messages that the ability to decode media messages, including systems in which they exist, and assess the influence. This is a different one, I think. Assess influence of those messages on thoughts and behaviors, and create media thoughtfully and conscientiously. Oh, so that's not even like literacy. It's not even really literacy necessarily. If it's talking about the creation of media, we're no longer talking about we're talking about output, no, exclusively input. The systems that something exists in, that's pretty simple. And to decode the messages that exist within media, so let's say a frog skipping away means some like it's a biblical reference to somebody turning into a prostitute. That's a loss of media literacy because people don't read the Bible, not even people so-called Christians. So that probably, yeah, decode messages, and then it gave an example. Yeah, seems pretty simple enough to understand. The influence of those messages, yeah, that makes sense. It's very simple.
They exist, assess the influence of those messages on thoughts, feelings, and behaviors,
Maybe
and
she
create
did
media
something
thoughtfully and
different.
conscientiously. Or, critical media literacy is about asking questions. Through CML, we not only explore what we know, but also ask how we know it. When practicing CML, we employ a collection of skills that help us move from being passive consumers of media to becoming engaged critics and creators. What does that mean? Like, I know what all those words mean, and I understand what those definitions are getting at, but, like, what is critical thinking here? And what does it mean to decode the system in which something exists? And where do you even start with employing a collection of skills? A lot of organizations use some variation of the definition from the National Association of Media Literacy Education, which says that media literacy is the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, create, and act using all forms of communication. Now, this is vague as hell, but in other places on the NAMLE site, they give a little more detail, saying that media literacy is the ability to encode and decode the symbols transmitted via media, and synthesize, analyze, and produce mediated messages. I understand that media literacy is a complex topic, but it seemed like every single definition I found was not only super vague and abstract, but also different from every other definition.
Yeah,
Like,
they're all different.
gave definitions. Some of the sources I read didn't stop to define the term, they just assumed that the reader would be on the same page about what media literacy meant, which is a bold strategy when you're writing about such a complicated concept that doesn't seem to have any agreed upon definition. So why does all this research suck so bad at defining media literacy? Well, the good news is that other researchers are asking this same question. There's one article I read, Analysis of Definitions of Media Literacy, which, what a great title. And in this article, the author, W. James Potter, did a meta-analysis of other media literacy articles to figure out whether there's any widely agreed upon definition of the term. And what Potter found was that there are 434 different elements associated with media literacy across the hundreds of articles he read. Over 400 different skills or goals or outcomes that we associate with media literacy. To quote Potter, media literacy is regarded as being a conglomeration of a great many skills, including the ability to read, evaluate, analyze, imagine possibilities, deconstruct messages, recognize patterns, challenge meanings, judge credibility, decipher sense or intent, counter-argue, dig for truth, avoid influence, and produce messages. And scholars claim that media literacy has the power to help us improve a wide range of other skills and abilities.
For my life,
False messages in
the
the media,
last
create
before
positive habits from
my
scratch,
eyes.
and transform risky behaviors into positive
positive actions. It can alter
Ooh,
faulty beliefs about self, identity,
okay.
health, community, religion, and media bias while protecting our existing beliefs that are not faulty in some way. It can increase our degree of engagement with media, other people, institutions, and society at large.
Hate
So
that path
media
thing.
literacy is complicated.
I
And
need
what's
to
even worse
avoid
about all
that.
this is that when you can't even agree on what something means, it's impossible to agree on the scope of the problems with that thing or how to solve those problems. So not only was I running into these frustratingly vague definitions, but all the solutions that writers posed for how to teach better media literacy were also frustratingly vague. So many of the sources I looked at boiled down to teach students how to recognize fake news or talk to your kids about social media algorithms. For instance, on the NAMLE website, that's such a difficult series of letters to say. I'm not just gonna call it NAML, but that's pretty good. Namely's not bad. For instance, on the NAMLE website, they suggest integrating real-world examples of media into lessons, providing opportunities for hands-on learning, and teaching students about responsible online behavior and information literacy. And on the one hand, yeah, that's all great. But when I was training to be a teacher, we were constantly told about the value of relating topics to students' lives, using real-life examples as much as possible, making lessons hands-on, and helping kids learn how to responsibly use the internet. And that was almost a decade ago. To me, all of these solutions from the NAMLE felt both glaringly obvious, like, yeah, we should teach media literacy skills in school, but also unsatisfying. I refuse to believe that the way to fix people's poor media literacy is just pay more attention in English class. So the scholarly research had provided more problems than solutions. And at this point, I felt like I had wasted 3 weeks of my life getting nowhere on this project. So I did what we all do when we reach rock bottom. I went to Twitter. Part of this was because the scholarly stuff hadn't gotten me anywhere, but it was also because I was curious about another angle of this media literacy discussion. Whenever I had read about media literacy in an academic context, it was almost always focused on teaching students how to analyze nonfiction. Students were media literate when they could identify fake news or tell the difference between a news article and an advertisement. But colloquially, when most people use the term on the internet, it was more often applied to fiction. People are media literate when they can analyze TV shows or understand the themes of a movie. The difference between how academics and lay people use the term media literacy wasn't intended to be one of the main focuses of this video. It was just something that I was mildly curious about. But especially after having learned that even media literacy researchers can use the term wildly different from one another, I was interested in how this would be reflected in how the general public use the term. But probably unsurprisingly, Twitter didn't make anything clearer. When you search media literacy, you mostly just get people quote tweeting someone's opinion on a TV show and saying media literacy is dead. Believe it or not, there aren't in-depth Socratic dialogues happening on this godforsaken website. But there was something that surprised me during my Twitter excursion. Apparently, talking about media literacy is cringe.
What?
Now, maybe I'm too English teacher pilled to understand this, but I find it genuinely weird. That's like saying you think critical thinking is bad, actually, right? According to Twitter, people who care about media literacy are dweeby little nerds who don't want anyone to have any fun, and they just police people's interpretations of media. Media literacy enjoyers are pretentious woke scolds who want to overanalyze everything, when in reality, it's not that deep, bro. So, yet again, I had run into yet another hurdle that made this topic even more complicated than it was at the start. And I felt like the more I read about media literacy,
I mean, they are woke scolds for sure. But you know what?
Really difficult.
I love the woke people.
Simple, at least straightforward. But then I started to look into it and I found that
To be directionally right, if not quite a bit right.
Honestly, it's no wonder there's backlash against the very concept of media literacy. No wonder everyone thinks it's cringe. It's a nebulous concept at best with a squishy, ever-changing definition, and because it has so many other concepts packed into it, it's nigh impossible to pin down and thus also impossible to teach. So
Not only that, it's also it exposes books for being quite political, because one of the definitions definitely did talk about the background that, or the environment that something was created in, and of course all of those are political, even though we sort of see a weird sense of neutrality, an unjustified sense of neutrality in the times and places that we live in, even though they absolutely are political. And so these books are absolutely political. Just hand it over to somebody from 50 years ago and probably gonna scream smart, LGBT representation, ethnic representation, particular thought, I am thought diversity. These are all gonna be, these all just exist. Also, nice shot, buddy. Yeah. Do that again. Yeah. Glad that was in the end. Final zombie.
whenever people talk about it, any solution they offer is so basic it feels obvious, and audiences end up feeling condescended to. It's messy, it's complicated, it's frustrating, and it's still something I wanted to make a video about. But clearly my usual method of research wasn't getting me anywhere, so I did what all great academics do when they're frustrated out of their minds about what they're studying. I made it everyone else's problem too. I hit up 12 of my friends and asked them to sit down and chat with me about media literacy, and
Honestly, they added a lot more complications, but their insights did help me to work through the absolute mess that is media literacy. So let's see what they had to say.
Hi, you may not know me, but my name is Badilla. I'm a video essayist and friend of Zoe, most importantly.
My name's Ben. I run the YouTube channel Dummy.
I'm Elliot. I am a YouTuber.
Hi, my name is Emily, otherwise known as Lady Emily on the internet, from the YouTube channel Lady Emily, and I'm also co-writer for the channel Sarah Zed.
My name is Jose. I run a channel that is also named Jose.
Well, I'm Lee Kimchi. I am a video essayist here on YouTube.
I am Lily Alexander. I make video essays about art and gender and the tech industry.
Hello, I'm Lola Sebastian. I have a YouTube channel.
Art and gender and the tech industry.
Hello, I'm Lola Sebastian. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about primarily literary adaptations.
My name is Nick Covington. I'm the current creative director at Human Restoration Project.
I'm Noah Sampson. I make YouTube videos. I do commentary videos.
Yeah, my name is Scott Nicewander. I have a YouTube channel called NerdSync.
My name is Star. I'm an anime girl on the internet. I am a comic artist and YouTuber. I've been making comics and stories on the internet for basically as long as the internet has allowed you to do such a thing.
The first thing
And
I
then you go,
was to see if I
what the
could
fuck are
crowdsource the
these
definition of media
people?
literacy. And when I asked everyone how they defined media literacy, I got a really interesting variety of answers, mostly having to do with looking under the surface of a piece of media, getting something more than just the basic plot, whether or not that deeper meaning was intended by the author.
Media literacy, it comes in a lot of different shapes and forms, right? So when I think of someone who's media literate, it's someone who's engaging with a piece of media at a level that goes beyond passively consuming it. They're actively thinking about what they're seeing, what it means, and often placing it in greater context.
Media literacy is understanding what the message, what the point of something, or at least at the very least trying to uncover that and not necessarily taking everything as face value, I suppose.
So I think media literacy in general is your ability to properly read into those things, be able to see what somebody is trying to communicate, whether it be intentional or not intentional.
Media literacy is the ability to apply a variety of different ways of viewing media, the ability to understand a thing on its own terms and consider the context that it was made in.
All of these answers were so great. I was genuinely so impressed by every single person I talked to. But there were some particularly interesting tidbits that I want to look at. So remember some of the definitions for media literacy folks I brought up earlier? One of the things that almost all of them included was the idea that media literacy isn't just about how we consume media, but also the skills we employ when creating it. But even though all the people I interviewed are content creators, only 2 of them considered that creation element in their definitions. Nick, who's a teacher, and Ben, who studied media literacy and works in media.
But I think media literacy today looks like being a critical consumer of media, considering purposes, intentions, but then also in the creation space too. So I'm creating media and information for authentic audiences.
I would say that media literacy, expanding on that, is something like the ability to find and understand and maybe even create media in order to participate in society.
I found it fascinating that everyone else focused on media literacy skills from the viewer side of things rather than the creator side of things. But honestly, I think most of us think of it this way too, right? Media literacy is something you do when you're consuming media. It's a skill for readers. Writing skills are something totally different, right? I'll get into that in more depth later on, but for now, I also want to touch on another really interesting bit that Scott from NerdSync brought up. He said
Really
that being media
important.
literate means knowing the difference between plot and story.
It's really easy to confuse the idea of plot versus story, whereas the plot is the stuff that happens, it's the list of things that happens, but what's the story that the author is trying to tell through those things that happen? And so I think for me, it's trying to find that story, whether it's intended by the author or just something that I picked up through my reading or watching.
A couple weeks after I did those interviews, I actually sent Scott a DM to tell him how integral this idea he brought up was to my video. He was super nice about it, but admitted that he'd actually gotten it from a book, Wired for Story by Lisa Crone. I told him that I was totally fine just pretending like he came up with it on his own for the video, so everyone be sure to leave a comment talking about how cool and smart Scott is. But I did actually look into the book just to get some further context. And you know what's super interesting? This isn't a book about how to be a better reader. It's a book about how to be a better writer. So not only was plot versus story a really interesting framework on its own, but it also fit perfectly with the idea that media literacy is about both creating and consuming media. Plot versus story also connected really well with something both Star and Lady Emily mentioned.
When it comes to art, specifically people viewing art, movies, books, games, whatever, as a form of plot delivery or just basic idea delivery.
Oh, you alive?
What is it trying to say? What is it trying to do? That's on the surface level of they understand what is going on in the plot, even if not every single thing is directly spoon-fed to them, and also just kind of understanding the intent. Why is this being shown to us? Why is this important? And kind of gleaning additional information from that. And I feel like most people have a good grasp of the former, but the latter I feel like is where a lot of people sometimes struggle, and then that's where it causes problems occasionally.
The other thing I really like about the plot versus story framework is that it can be applied to all kinds of media literacy, not just fiction. Like if you're reading a news article, you have the plot, which is the literal words on the page, the factual information that the journalist wrote, but you also have the story, which is the rhetorical purpose of the article, what the journalist is trying to get you to feel or do, along with all of the other context, like where and when it was published. This actually solves some of the issues I had with the academic research on media literacy. Earlier, I mentioned that it seemed like when academics talk about media literacy, they were usually referring to how people engage with nonfiction, like news. But when the general public talks about it, they're usually talking about how people engage with fiction, like movies and books. It
You mean
also
people
some
into
fundamental
it,
difference between what each of those groups meant when they used the term. But now I realize that no, media literacy is both of those things. Though all that being said, even after these interviews, I still hadn't found a perfect definition of media literacy. I was starting to get a better idea of what it meant, though, and I realized that maybe its elusiveness as a concept is actually part of it. Media literacy is all the things my interviewee said, and all the things the research article said too. It is a whole bunch of skills like looking under the surface, asking questions about how and why things are made, thinking about the context in which things are made, and using those skills on both fiction and nonfiction, both as a consumer and a creator. Media literacy is complicated, and maybe the fact that it's so complicated is part of why people struggle with it so much. But now that I knew that, now that I knew just how messy this topic was, I could start to actually confront the problem. I could start to solve the media literacy crisis. Except, when I asked my guests about this crisis, a lot of them didn't think it existed. The consensus actually seemed to be that people have always been bad at being critical consumers. It's just that now, thanks to the internet, we're all a lot more aware of the problem than we used to be.
Yes, there's a crisis. However, I think it's perpetual. I think there's always been a crisis. There probably always will, because you cannot be an expert in everything at all times. I would say that a lack of deeper thinking and understanding has probably existed for a long time. I guess maybe the reason why people these days are it's a crisis is because we have access to so many things now, so much knowledge now. But part of me feels like some level of this has existed for forever.
I don't know if I would call it a crisis. I feel as though there's always been bad media analysis out there, and social media has just made it more common.
Honestly, it seemed like at every single turn, this video was just getting more and more complicated. I had just gotten a handle on what media literacy meant, and then as soon as I tried to move on to solving the problem, now suddenly I had to consider that maybe there wasn't even a problem to solve in the first place. Was it even worth making a video about media literacy if there's not a crisis? Well, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that there may not be a media literacy crisis. The bad news is that there still is a crisis happening.
that's the overview of my view on media literacy right now. I think it's symptomatic as opposed to the source of the problem. I don't think the singular focus on it addresses the problem that we observe when we say media literacy crisis.
I do not think that there's a media literacy crisis. I think the crisis is imperialism and capitalism, and it has been this way forever. I think it's part of a constantly morphing crisis, which is our state of affairs and systems.
There wasn't some kind of perfectly ideal.
It's part of a constantly morphing crisis, which forever. I think it
addresses the problem that we observe when we say media literacy crisis.
I do not think that there's a media literacy crisis. I think the crisis is imperialism and capitalism, and it has been this way forever. I think it's part of a constantly morphing crisis, which is our state of affairs, our systems.
There wasn't some kind of perfectly ideal media literate past that we've fallen from over the past couple
What
of
a
decades.
nothing
but clearly
statement.
There is something wrong, right? Reddit has countless threads about how Walter White was a hero and Thanos was morally correct. Facebook is full of people who can't tell the difference between a real photograph and whatever this is. Every single content creator I know has gotten comments from people who are mad
Zombies
about
are
what they didn't
dying.
say in their video. I've personally experienced several instances of people asking questions that they could find the answer to if they just took a single second to look at the description. Something is wrong. We all feel it. We all see it. So what is happening? If media literacy is about asking questions about the media you're consuming or creating, then bad media literacy is when you don't do that. So what is stopping people from doing that? Well, there's quite a few potential answers. It's possible that people are just lazier or less intelligent than they used to be, but I think that's a deeply uncurious answer to this problem, because people don't exist in a vacuum, and we're all products of our environments and the systems we're living within. Insert coconut tree joke here. So instead of blaming individuals, let's take a look at this environment and all these systems and see if they have any answers for us. While I was thinking through all of this, the most obvious answer to me was that people aren't asking questions about their media because asking questions takes time. And like I talked about in my video on efficiency,
And talk a shit or whatever. They're gonna be like, oh, I have to get in the comments and react to this immediately.
if media literacy is about asking questions about the media you're consuming or creating, then bad media literacy is when you don't do that. So what is stopping people from doing that? Well, there's quite a few potential answers. It's possible that people are just lazier or less intelligent than they used to be, but I think that's a deeply uncurious answer to this problem, because people don't exist in a vacuum, and we're all products of our environments and the systems we're living within. Insert coconut tree joke here. So instead of blaming individuals, let's take a look at this environment and all these systems and see if they have any answers for us. While I was thinking through all of this, the most obvious answer to me was that people aren't asking questions about their media because asking questions takes time. And like I talked about,
It's imperialism,
a lot of systems
capitalism.
prioritize speed and immediacy
Fuck
at cost.
that
This
means.
was actually something a couple of people brought up during our interviews.
I think media literacy is having the ability to interpret the information that you are consuming in a rational manner. And now with social media and technology, that all that really means is just not having the instantaneous reaction that these systems and platforms are designed to make you have, to like or to share or to quote and talk a shit. Or
Oh
whatever.
my.
Oh, I have to get in the comments and react to this immediately, because that is sort of what the internet culture is. I have to have an opinion, I have to have a reaction very quickly rather than sitting with it and thinking about it. So it almost is sort of like, I wonder if like YouTube comments in general is part of potentially a problem of everyone being like, oh, I want to be the first to comment this. I have to have an opinion or reaction so quickly rather than just like, that was interesting. Let me sit with this a little bit. So for me, with stuff like Velma, it was important to me to get in front of it and be like, let's not be too hasty. Here is stuff to get excited for, and try to be open-minded about it. Because if I don't have an immediate reaction, the people who will are the people who are going to say horrible, bigoted things. I mean, they're going to say it regardless. It is hard because I wish I could take the time and like, marinate in it and sort of be like, here are my full thoughts. But because the people I don't like are going to say their thoughts immediately, it does sort of pressure me to be like, well, I have to get my thoughts out quick, also really quick, because I don't want them to be the only voices out there that people are listening to.
In other words, social media and the internet more generally incentivizes immediate reactions. This is clear in some obvious ways, like how you're rewarded when you post about a trending topic, because algorithms favor relevance and recency. But there are also some features of social media that we don't really stop to think about that also play into this, like how you're able to comment on a YouTube video you haven't watched or share a link on Facebook to an article you haven't read. One of the reasons for this is that a lot of our media is focused on making things as easy as possible for consumers. Restricting your ability to immediately comment with whatever gut reaction something made you feel would be frustrating, and people might feel like they were being censored. On top of this, the algorithms used by YouTube and Amazon provide hyper-individualized recommendations, so you don't have to waste time looking for what you want. Everything is made to be easy, straightforward, and uncomplicated. And this is true for our art too.
What you
Generally speaking,
want.
at a societal level, we like
I
easy
agree with
stuff.
that.
We like the easy melodrama of soap operas and CW shows. We like the self-indulgent fan service in Marvel and Star Wars. We like the simple, familiar 3-act hero's journey. But while we like all those things, they don't prompt us to ask questions. They don't surprise us. They don't take risks. They're
Why'd you
designed to
say
keep
we?
easy, media
Do
equivalent
not
of junk
speak
food.
for
We love to
me.
doom scroll and binge watch and not have to think too hard about what we're consuming. We just like, we
no.
love to eat fatty, salty foods
I
that are
don't.
convenient and easy, if not nutritionally dense. Sure, it hits all those short-term pleasure receptors in our brains, but at what cost? And just to be clear, I'm not trying to media shame or food shame anyone. All of these things are enjoyable, and that's okay.
Jesus Christ.
I spend
I can't. My heart's gonna. I'm about to have a heart attack listening to this. It's okay. Nah, really? You know what? Just because I don't need the reassurance doesn't mean other people do, but it was so inoffensive to begin with that I think adding that and saying it in the way that she did, nah, I'm good. I'm good. It's okay. No, it's not okay. It's actually really bad for your body, and it's kind of sucks that people do this. Probably need way better food education and food incentives to begin with in society. Basically, what I'm proposing is not really making it. It's really hard because when I'm talking about on a population level, I'm talking about, well, these are the individual kind of ceases to exist. People sort of make People make predictable decisions within the particular circumstances that they exist in. So, it's not really an individual problem. It's kind of a shit. People existing in a bad system that incentivizes bad actions. 3 zombies left. No, it's 2. It's not 8. 7. Oh my god. Oh my god. How did that happen? No, I can't watch it. I'll go back to my anime breakdowns.
So, if I had to boil down the things I appreciate and look for most in fiction to a thing, I would probably say character writing, and or the way that character writing can interact with themes and such. Wow, that wasn't even planned. Themes and such. And I think a lot of people would assume that about me, is that given the things I talk about in my videos, the things I point out in my streams, just the things I talk about all over the place in Discord, on Twitter, whatever, Alexander, AJ, is a character writing guy. But something I've started to realize recently is that just as important as character writing to me, when it comes to certain mediums, sorry, I'm fiddling around with my jacket here, is the ability of a series or a story to transmit a mood and an atmosphere through music, visuals, intangible elements added to the presentation or the writing at that point in the story or whatever, to really make me forget about everything else and just embed something iconic in my mind and something that I'll lose myself in. I've talked about this in prior videos and on streams and such about how much immersion and losing myself in fiction really matters to me. But honestly, with every year that goes by, I find myself valuing this more and more and more, and it may end up being my favorite thing in stories one day. It's definitely like top 3 or 4 at this point. So I just wanted to take this time to talk about that a little bit and some stories that evoke that in me, and maybe you guys can relate. I don't know. I have a lot of stories for which, you know, you can see all around me in my room. To my right, your left, is Bleach. You know, on the volume there. There's a hat involving Red Dead Redemption 2. I might talk about that, actually. In a second. Bottom left there's a Haunter mat you can just see the top of. There's a Tokyo Ghoul volume on the left. There's Final Fantasy VII. Below that, there's Hunter x Hunter, Meruem to my left. There's some Jujutsu Kaisen, there's some Yakuza. And a lot of these series, to my left and your right, there's Arcane posters, there's Expedition 33, Hoseki no Kuni, One Piece, Final Fantasy XIV, Gurren Lagann above me, you know, over here. For a lot of these series, I watch them primarily, or sorry, I experience them, and a lot of my favorites, a lot of these series, first and foremost, the character writing comes across. And I wouldn't love them if I didn't love being in the world, but I don't necessarily think about that immersion, that sort of feel, being lost in it as much, because it just isn't as much of an impact, and my version of being lost in these works tends to be through the story, tends to be through the more tangible things. But there's something beautiful about the intangibles, and something I've come to internally think of as vibes fiction, where just the setting, just the vibes, and can enthrall you and lure you in. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And to be clear, there are some series for which the vibes in the fiction are additive to them standing out in other ways. But then there are others in which the vibes are the main draw. So to say some of the former, where I adore the story and characters, and they come across incredibly well, and in addition to that, the vibes are just immaculate. A great example of this for me would be Final Fantasy IX. I absolutely adore that story. It's one of my favorite video game narratives, but just as well as that, I so adore the background art and the music to accentuate the atmosphere, and a scene in a cave with a roaring fire and just ambient quiet as the party gets ready to set out. And just to be clear, I'm not going to spoil any of these stories. I'm just going to say general vibe stuff. Another example would be Xenoblade 3, or for Final Fantasy IX, I also just love exploring the dark, seedy, but yet vast expanse of Trino, this beautiful town of Limblum. Wonderful settings. Another example of this would be Red Dead Redemption 2, where the story is straight up unbelievable, one of the best stories I've ever experienced, but at the same time, I could just silently play that game for 4 hours straight, just roaming the setting, being lost and trying to find the mysteries in the bayou, or just taking in the rise of the sun as the fog, the morning fog and the morning mist rolls off of the plains and over across the creeks and rivers, and it almost feels like Arthur's in a dream. And that accentuates the story, whereas I'm not only here for the vibes, and I'm not primarily here for the vibes, but the vibes, my god, are they such an important element of it. Another one would be Xenoblade Chronicles, where that is one of the most enthralling beat per beat stories ever. I love that story. I always come back to it. I love seeing people experience that story. I love the gameplay. I love it holistically, but my god, being in Machna Forest, walking across the bridge and seeing the beautiful waterfall with the music playing, that wonderful Forest of the Nopon song. What else? Cyberpunk 2077, the vibes of like a rainy night in Cyberpunk when the fluorescent lights, the neon signs just about peek through the fog and the rain. And there is a strange sort of haunting beauty in spite of this miserable technological industrial mass of a setting. Cyberpunk to me is immense vibes fiction to accentuate a wonderful story. And then there's something like Twilight Princess, where one of my favorite lines of all time to me is The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, where sorry, just trying to get a good. Oh, this is perfect. This is perfect. One of the first lines in the entire Twilight Princess game is, "Tell me, do you ever feel a strange sadness as dusk falls? With this beautiful dusk falling in this wonderful spring, with nature all around, just the tranquil sounds of a babbling brook." And then we have these two characters who take their horses across these sunlit, drenched in twilight bridges back to their humble little village in the Highland Forest. Twilight Princess specifically really entranced me through the vibes it presented through the first few minutes and then the first couple of hours. And these are all stories that I think, in addition to being wonderful stories or wonderful works with great gameplay and other elements that stand out just as much, are accentuated that much more by the vibes. A couple more to add to that for me would be Pokemon. Pokemon, specifically generations 2 to 4. For example, Gold, Silver, Crystal, just walking around Ecruteak, taking in the culture, or the quiet waves on the beach of Signwood, or in Four Tree City for Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, or the Hoenn games. Being one at nature with Pokemon, with the rain in the route parallel to it.
I'm a fucking legend.
Being in Lava Ridge Town with the hot springs. The vibes are immaculate. And then in Sinnoh, in the Sinnoh games, maybe in the quiet Snow Point City, where your footsteps are muffled and the snow gently drifts down. Or Canalave City, Canalave Town, where it's so nostalgic and it feels like you are reliving your childhood through the music embodying elements of Gold, Silver, Crystal. But also just vibing in the library. Just seeing the waves swing back and forth in this beautiful port town with these haunted undertones. Wonderful stuff. And then there's Witcher 3. One of my favorites, where a beautiful story is accentuated by incredible vibes, is The Witcher 3. One of the, arguably, like in the conversation, with the best game I've ever experienced in terms of establishing this atmosphere and allowing the player to lose themselves in it. Just the rain falling down in a sort of haunted night as you are on the hunt with Geralt. You know, maybe just a really breezy, clear morning with the sun rising on Skellige. Even the dirty, gritty vibes of Novigrad as you go through and see this corruption, but there is a delectable magnetism to how authentic that corruption is, and the joy of losing yourself in how authentic it is. Hopefully I'm able to adequately get across and describe how evocative these bits and these games are to me. These are all games, by the way. I don't think there's a coincidence that most of my vibes fiction tends to be video games, but I will talk about a couple other non-video game stuff in a second. But then in terms of games and series where the vibe is the primary draw for me, Super Mario Sunshine. That is one of my favorite Mario games, one of my favorite games in general, and the draw for it for me is Delfino, is the setting, is losing myself in the sunset of Sirena Beach, or just walking around Delfino Plaza, taking in the world building and the charm all over the place. Oh, and I cannot let this pass without speaking of 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. Just the moment-to-moment vibe in each vignette of the scene. If you played it, you know. If not, play 13 Sentinels. Take in what each scene feels like through visuals, the most beautiful visuals, and like basically anything. Music, and just the way it's able to establish a feel through each given scene. Incredible. But then there's Super Mario Sunshine, which I go to primarily for those vibes and those atmospheres, through the setting, through how much joy I get through Delfino, this tropical atmospheric vacation of a setting with so much culture. Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, one of my favorite Zelda games, to this day one of my favorite games, but so much of the draw of that is actually, you know, taking shelter during a stormy, rainy night in an inn with a bunch of other people, just waiting out the storm, or cooking during as you see the sun rising, just doing a cozy little cook session with Link. It's all over the place with Zelda. There are these liminal, beautiful spaces throughout Zelda games that I can just sit in and just be there forever and just let it wash over me. I'm a very sentimental person. A couple other ones I want to mention is the original Animal Crossing. I made a video about that, and it's far more than just the vibes, but Animal Crossing to me, the first Animal Crossing, is vibes fiction. If you want a bit more of that, you can check out my video of that on this channel. And also the Pokemon Legends Arceus game, in addition to previous Pokemon games, the vibes there, specifically through the music, kind of Breath of the Wild-y for me. Even though I know it doesn't look anywhere near as gorgeous as Breath of the Wild, but I still think they really get that atmosphere across beautifully. And then there's also a couple of other bits of fiction where I love other elements of it, but what really gets me is the vibe is Final Fantasy VIII, Fisherman's Horizon, Galbadia Garden, the overworld theme, Blue Fields. And there's so much I admire about that game, and the character writing. Squall is an all-time video game protagonist for me. And I think the cast is really well-rounded, and the plot is fantastic. I really have a lot of love for Final Fantasy VIII, but what really sells it to me is the vibe. It's pure vibes fiction for me. The vibe of Final Fantasy VIII, they kind of nailed that one. And then there's vibes. Final Fantasy XIV, at this current moment, is my favorite video game of all time. And the reason I love it is because of the story. I mean, a lot of things, but primarily the story and the character writings and the themes. And how emotional these incredible elements have made me as they come together in this cohesive package. But actually getting into Final Fantasy XIV, you have to go, well, you don't have to, you can skip ARR, but I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't have changed getting into ARR, the first expansion for Final Fantasy XIV. I wouldn't change that for the world. And what really entranced me about ARR, I think there's lots of limitations to it, but what really entranced me is the cozy vibes, the music, how cozy it was to just, you know, quietly, slowly level up. No rush, no place to be, and just lose yourself in the locales, in the forests, in the desert, in Ul'dah. Incredible, incredible. Let me play the music for that, because that is, yeah. Oh man, guys, I love vibes fiction. I really do. And one more to add to this is The Elder Scrolls. You know what? I'll be the first to say that The Elder Scrolls does not have very good storytelling. I don't think it has very good characters a lot of the time. I don't think the plot is enticing. I think the most interesting parts of the storytelling are outside of the main plot, and even then, I don't find them to be that impressive, to be honest. But what I will always say is first class in The Elder Scrolls is the setting, the music, and how they and all these intangible elements combine to form a vibe. Skyrim and Oblivion, Morrowind to a bit of a lesser extent, are two of the most vibey, just get lost.
Morrowind is so much better than both of those two.
And see the snow coming down.
Yeah, fuck boy, yeah.
Tree on a really rainy day. What I do when I need to work, when I really need to focus, and I need my mind at ease, is I just throw on. There are these videos on YouTube, these ambient Skyrim videos. There's like just an hour long of rain, just Skyrim rain. There's a 40-minute long track in the Skyrim OST.
How
which
do you glitch the drops to not blink?
I can't even describe what it's.
That's what you can do there. Is that just a DOA thing?
Maybe some flowing water, a bird chirping, the sound of some light wind, the sun rising. The Elder Scrolls can capture this atmosphere like nothing else. And in addition to that, something more recent I've experienced, Chrono Cross. I think it gets the vibes of the setting across so sublimely, so incredibly. There's the vibes of the mansion in the house in Fata Morgana, which is a visual novel, not necessarily a video game. But yeah, that's just a bunch of stories for which I really just love losing myself in the vibe. And you'll notice that there are some I haven't mentioned that are really high on my list. That doesn't necessarily mean I don't love the vibe in those as well. These are just some that came to mind first. But I do think it's worth noting that the vibes fiction is primarily video games. There's something that video games can do that can lose you in them, that is undescribable and a lot easier to do when you're playing and exploring yourself than anywhere else. I think also Soulsborne is fantastic vibes fiction for me. Obviously, there's much more to it than just the vibes, but the vibes are incredible. In Sekiro, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, Lies of P, to me, incredible. Some of the best vibes fiction, in addition to all the other wonderful
Where the Lies of P come from?
Visuals and atmospheric and
Soulsborne?
gameplay elements and thematic stuff that all these games do incredibly. Also, Expedition 33. Oh, the vibes I feel in the manor, this ominous, haunting, magnetic feel I get through just looking through the halls, looking at all the different rooms, all the different ethereal, atmospheric, out of this world, imaginative environments.
Adjunctive.
In Expedition 33.
What does that mean? No, adjunctive, motherfucker. What the f? Motherfucker, don't play with me. Adjunctive. Adjunctive is in the Cambridge Dictionary. Isn't. Alright, Merriam-Webster. Adjunctive. Involving the medical use of adjunct. A person with or assisting another person in service. Shit that I'm talking about. You can't come up with a definition? Pussy. Shit song, move.
Imagine the language.
Shut up.
Whittled away so many hours at that camp. In addition, Dragon Age Origins. To me, some of the best vibes fiction can happen in video games just at camp. Red Dead Redemption 2, camp, some of the best vibes ever, but Dragon Age Origins, specifically like BioWare-esque titles, where you just are in camp and you're just building your relationship with these characters, seeing interactions between them, talking with them, getting lots of great dialogue and character building and relationships building. In Dragon Age Origins, that was one of my earliest experiences with vibe fiction. And Baldur's Gate 3. Lots of people love so many elements of Baldur's Gate 3. But I think what's most inviting and first class about it to me is one, the character writing of certain characters like Astarion or characters like that. It's incredible. For the best characters in Baldur's Gate 3, it's amazing. But my favorite thing about it
had so much room though. I'm actually very surprised I didn't make it through. I think I judged that basically correctly.
Incredible voice acting and the vibe it elicited. Sorry for repeating myself, but the title of this video is Vibes Fiction. I really hope this video is giving you some of those vibes. I hope it's allowing you to just kind of take a load off whatever you're doing, whether you're doing dishes, doing chores, or working out, or going for a walk, or doing work on your other screen or something. I hope this is vibes fiction, or vibes non-fiction. But in addition, I think there's an element of it to Resident Evil. I won't, I could be here forever talking about the vibes of all my favorite fiction, because all my favorite fiction have these vibes. But going forward, I have some things I'm going to play, which I really hope give me some great vibes. Specifically, Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. I don't remember much of Knights of the Old Republic 2 outside of the fact that I love certain elements of it, but a lot of my memories of it have sort of gone away over the years, like I mentioned in my Star Wars video. So I'm hoping that Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 really elicit this incredible atmosphere and vibe that I love from sort of BioWare, Obsidian-esque. I don't really know the developer situation with those sorts of games, but you know, I'm hoping for that with Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. I hope the vibes and atmosphere are fantastic. And in addition, in the near future, I really actually want to try out Mass Effect on stream. I actually played it ages ago, like 15 years ago or something, but I've forgotten basically everything about it, outside of the fact that it's in space, and I think there's a character named Commander Shepard, and Garrus. I don't remember anything outside of that, and I really would love to be able to play this on stream, and I really would love for that sort of vibe of the Baldur's Gate, Dragon Age Origins, character building vibe, but maybe through the expanse of space, maybe a different sort of atmosphere. I'd love to lose myself in another world, like KOTOR, like Mass Effect. Just some hopes for the future. And that's not to say I don't feel vibes in non-video game stuff. I absolutely do. One of the first vibes fiction things I talk about is Mad Men. Mad Men is... This is crazy, man. Oh my god.
I knew shooting them was bad.
And it just played the Mad Men opening credit song. I swear, I'm not adding this music in post. That's crazy. Wow. Anyways, hold on. Baldur's Gate. Let's put some Baldur's Gate music. Mad Men. I could be lost in Mad Men's worlds. 1960s America, specifically New York, forever. There have been years of my life where I watch Mad Men, rewatch it, love it for the characters and the incredible detail, attention to detail, incredible little touches and structure. But what keeps me coming back is the world and the vibes. There's something so comforting about being in Mad Men's world, despite it being horrendously dark and cautionary and an example of some of the progress that's been made in the world and how much progress still needs to be made. But the authenticity of the costume design, the visuals, the music, the dialogue, and just how it entrances you into the atmosphere of the office and the office politics and everything about that. Mad Men is one of the best vibes fiction I've ever seen. In addition to being first class in basically every way, I also love the Succession for that. Succession has incredible vibes for me. But in terms of anime-manga, which is arguably the thing that people look to me most for in terms of content, there's lots of great vibes throughout a lot of stuff. I love the rainy, moody vibes of several elements of sequences of Bleach in the rain. The vibes that I got from that panel of Kisuke Urahara with the umbrella over Ichigo, and the idea of rain. That's very thematic, obviously, and symbolic, and great storytelling, but that gets across something incredibly special in terms of vibes. But something that I think, the series that I think I want to talk about that gets across these magnetic, lose yourself in these spreads and panels, vibes, more than anything out there to me. Vagabond's also a great one, but the one that does it more than anything, to me, that really replicates that video game feel. One Piece is another great one through its locales, but through a sort of quiet beauty, an understated beauty, yet at the same time grand in communicating its worlds and the natural beauty of it to juxtapose the misery within, is Berserk. Yeah, that spread of Guts just looking up at the starry night sky, tons of them, of Guts and company just walking across the beach, of Guts just by his lonesome overlooking the camp, and all the lights silhouetted in the starlight against a tree. Guts just gently smiling in Falconia. Yeah, Berserk gets that across so beautifully. I just said 3 or 4 of them, but it's everywhere. It's every other chapter. There is a stunning moment as long as it's outside of the epic fights, you know. But even sometimes during them, there's an epic moment. Sorry, there's an incredible serene moment that just makes you, it just takes your breath, away, through how it transmits a feel, through just scale, or natural beauty, and vibes. Yeah, I don't know if anything I've said really makes sense, but I hope so. I hope you can at least understand where I'm coming from, because I'm really speaking to the heart of this. Vibes mean a lot to me. Vibes fiction has slowly become one of my favorite, most important things, and I can only imagine that continuing. Let me know if you know what I mean, or if you have different vibes fiction, or maybe you can think of vibes fiction that you know I love, or you know I've experienced that maybe I haven't mentioned. Because, like I said, there's literally dozens, maybe hundreds that I didn't mention, but I'd be here all day. Let me know. Vibes fiction, man, it's special, and I'm glad that I finally was able to talk about it just a little bit, because I mention it on stream sometimes, but it's really a huge part of me, so I want to sort of get this across. I've rambled for far too long. Thank you so much for listening, for watching, for making this video a part of your vibes for the day. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much.
Why are you not dragging? Oh my god. Just drag yourselves to where I am standing. They're on snap points, aren't they? You guys are gonna die. Are you breaking my window? is that broken down already? Fuck out my window. It's you too. I'll take another one. I need to change my round 14 strat. It needs an intervention. Good song, move on.
Where speaking it correctly in some situations makes you sound a little bit odd. Yeah, in some situations, using correct grammar of this language may amuse people, but if you write the way you actually speak, you'll be called illiterate. But then there There are other situations where if you don't use the correct grammar, you come off as rude. And while you have to keep all of this in mind and seamlessly shift between grammar based on the situation, you should do it while pronouncing possibly one of the hardest consonant sounds which doesn't even exist in any other language in the world. A language that gave us this masterpiece. Ahoy, my name is Julie, and welcome to the Czech language. If you for some reason haven't heard this great example of Czech culture, I'll leave a link in the description, you'll thank me later. Czech, or Czechtina, is spoken by over 10 million people, the vast majority in the Czech Republic, a country comprising the historical provinces of Bohemia, Moravia, and the slice of southern Silesia. Czech is the sole official language of the Czech Republic, or Czechia, which became independent in 1993, following the peaceful split with Slovakia, the so-called Velvet Divorce. Slovak language is a very close sibling of Czech. There are endless debates on whether the two languages are actually two languages or two dialects, and it all comes to how you define a language versus a dialect. While some people say that Czech and Slovak are mutually intelligible and basically two varieties of the same language, others say what nonsense it is, two languages and they're absolutely incomprehensible and definitely not mutually intelligible whatsoever at all. So it all depends on who you ask. As a rule of thumb, Slovaks understand Czech better than Czechs understand Slovak because Slovaks are more exposed to the Czech media. Czech dialects fall into two main groups that kind of split the country in two. Bohemian in the west, where the capital Prague is, and Moravian in the east. Moravian is further subdivided into Central Moravian or Hanakian, Silesian or Lakian in the northeast near Poland, which shares some features with Polish, and Moravian Slovak in the southeast, which shades into Slovak. There's also a transitional Bohemian Moravian dialect. But there's another division, a social one. Czech has a pronounced state of diglossia. There are essentially two versions of the language. Standard Czech, a formal, archaic, semi-artificial creation reserved for writing and formal context, and Common Czech, the naturally evolved vernacular that people speak with friends and family, which is based on Bohemian dialect, though outside Bohemia people will speak their own dialect. To understand how so much complexity could happen on such a small territory, one requires a trip back in time. Czech belongs to the West Slavic branch of the Indo-European language family. The Indo-European family originated around 4000 millennium BC, with its speakers associated with the Yamnaya culture on the Pontic-Caspian steppes. I have a whole video that dives into the Indo-European origin theories. Check it out. From there, languages branched off in waves: Anatolian, Greek, Celtic, Germanic, and eventually Balto-Slavic. The Slavic branch diverged around the 2nd millennium BC. Throughout the 1st millennium BC, the Proto-Slavic speakers inhabited the lands between the Middle Dnieper and Upper Dniester in present-day Ukraine and Belarus. According to linguistic analysis, the split between the Eastern, Western, and Southern Slavic branches takes place around the 2nd century CE, though different Slavic dialects remained mutually intelligible for a very long time, even after that. Even now, you show a Slavic text to any other Slav, and I as a Slav can confirm, provided they can read the script, I'm sure they will understand more or less what the text is about. Then, during the 5th and 6th centuries, Slavs spread across Central and Eastern Europe in just a few generations. The migration was probably due to multiple factors: climate change, power vacuums left by westward migrating Germanic tribes, and the pool of the nomadic Avar Empire. It was a big mess, and Slavs used this mess to their advantage. Around this period, Western Slavic speakers had arrived in the Czech lands, gradually assimilating the remaining Germanic populations. The first political entity emerged when these Slavs, under a Frankish merchant named Samo, rebelled against their Avar overlords around 623, though their independence was short-lived. The real deal came in the 9th century with Great Moravia, the first major Slavic state. In 863, Prince Rostislav, seeking independence from Frankish religious influence, asked the Byzantine emperor, all the way from Constantinople, for missionaries who could preach in Slavic. The emperor sent two brothers, Cyril and Methodius. They created the first writing system designed specifically for a Slavic language, and no, it wasn't Cyrillic, which they would also create, but later on. Their first creation was the Glagolitic. Even though some letters seem to be based on Greek, Hebrew, or Latin character, or even something else, it was a completely unique script. That was its biggest problem, because it was simply hard to learn, especially for Greek speakers who were the ones doing the actual preaching. So later, when the brothers, or more likely their successors, created Cyrillic, they mostly based it on Greek, adding extra letters for unique Slavic sounds, and that was much more successful. I mean, how often do you see Glagolitic in everyday life? Though it does look cool, I admit. Great Moravia reached its peak under Svetopluk, expanding into Bohemia and Silesia. But after Methodius died in 885, Svetopluk expelled the Slavic clerics who fled to Bulgaria, and with them the Glagolitic tradition migrated south. Great Moravia itself, weakened by internal strife, was destroyed by invading Magyars in the early 10th century. This was also the beginning of the split between Czech and Slovak. The part of Moravia that became incorporated into Hungary would later evolve into Slovakia. At the same time, the Bohemia part of Great Moravia became the Duchy of Bohemia and eventually got incorporated into the Holy Roman Empire. Glagolitic gave way to the Latin script under Frankish and papal influence. From the 12th century, though, Czech began replacing Latin in administration and literature. Chronicle of Dalimil, published around 1320, is the first known major literary work written in Czech, as Glagolitic in the 9th century was actually used to inscribe Old Slavonic, which is essentially Old Bulgarian, which shows how mutually intelligible different Slavic languages still were at that point. The 14th century was a golden age. Prague University was founded in 1348, the Old Czech Bible was translated, the first Czech dictionaries appeared. Then, in the early 15th century, the theologian Jan Hus revolutionized not only the Czech church, preceding Martin Luther by over a century, but also Czech orthography. Instead of digraphs for unique Czech sounds, he introduced diacritical markers, a single Czech turning s into sh, s into ch, z into j, and so on. This was so ingenious that this system was later adopted by numerous other languages around the world, not necessarily Slavic. The 16th century, Habsburgs took control of Bohemia, and after the Battle of White Mountain in 1620, consolidated their rule, forcefully re-Catholicizing the population who was already predominantly Hussite. Maybe that's why today Czechia is known as one of the most atheistic countries in the world. They just had too much drama because of religion. German became the language dominating cities, universities, ports, and government, while Czech entered a 200-year-long period of decline. In the 19th century, the national revival brought the Czech back from the brink. Josef Dobrovský codified a new literary standard, but here's the twist. He modeled it not on the Czech people were actually speaking, but on the 16th century Kralice Bible. He was effectively resurrecting a language from 200 years earlier. This is where the difference between the formal and the spoken Czech stems from. Jan Svetopluk Pressel expanded the scientific vocabulary, replacing German and Latin scientific terms by words coined in Czech or by borrowings from Polish and Russian. For example, words for chemical elements like kyslík, oxygen, uhlík, carbon, and vodík, hydrogen. The same period saw the rise of prominent Czech writers and poets like Karel Hynek Mácha and his poem Mine, which became probably the most often published Czech book. But Czech did not only adopt. The English word robot actually comes from Czech, originating from the word robota, which means forced labor. It was coined in 1920 for the Czech play Rossum's Universal Robots to designate biological artificial humans created to perform all human labor. In 1918, Czechoslovakia was born, and Czech finally became an official language. Czechoslovakia, World War II, Czechoslovakia again, but with a communist Kurdistan, end of communism, and peaceful split with Slovakia until arriving at the modern-day Czechia and Czech language. By the way, like and subscribe, help the algorithm understand this video is awesome so that I can make more language content for you. Now let's see how Czech is actually spoken. Czech uses the Latin alphabet for its graphics, including the digraph CH, which counts as a single letter. What makes Czech's alphabet special are three diacritical marks. The háček, that's the converted hat, creates new consonants. The čárka, an acute accent, marks vowel length. And the kroužek, a tiny ring, sits on U, a long U sound that's a historical relic of an older diphthong. Czech spelling is remarkably regular, nearly a one-to-one correspondence between letters and sounds. Nearly. The letters I and Y are pronounced identically as E, but the first one palatizes the preceding D, T, or N, while the second one doesn't. So this is T and this is T. And then there is this letter. It transforms whatever consonant comes before it. After D, T, and N, it palatizes them, like D. After B, P, V, F, it inserts a Y sound, like bie. After M, it inserts a N. So this word, which means town, is actually pronounced mniesto. Now the consonants. Among Czech's 25 consonant phonemes sits the crown jewel of Czech phonology. Described as a post-alveolar trill with considerable friction, you simultaneously roll your tongue and produce friction. Nothing else. It exists in no other standard language in this form, not even in Slovak. It's so difficult that many Czech children require speech therapy to learn how to pronounce it. Foreigners, good luck.
What?
The consonant clusters. Czech tolerates clusters that would make most languages nervous. 4 or even 5 consonant clusters are not uncommon, like in pstruh or štrtek. There are even words with no vowels at all. Book, the famous stump that would make most languages nervous. 4 or even 5 consonant clusters are not uncommon, like in pstruh.
Pstru. Trout. Pstru. What the fuck? Pstru.
Or štrtek. There are even
Štrtek? What?
are not uncommon, like in pstruh or štrtek.
Oh. Štrtek. Oh. Fuck, I always struggle to say this one. Štrtek. Fuck, that's so hard. Bullshit.
There are even words with no vowels at
How
all.
does she say it?
Or štrtek. There are even words with no vowels at all. Book, the famous tongue twister. Stick your finger through your throat. Contains not a single vowel. Vowels are simpler, 5 short and 5 long. Length is phonemic. It changes the meaning. Dal means he gave, and dal means further. Stress always falls on the first syllable, but stress and vowel lengths are completely independent. So you can have a short stressed vowel and a long unstressed one, as in say salad. But well, enough of me talking. Let's hear the native speakers.
Nálepkování jako ta meditace nebo něco, prostě to jenom nechám plynout a pomáhá mi to taky, no. Takže tohle, co jsem slyšel od vás, tak to mi taky hodně pomohlo. Jo, je to jako nuda je dobrá věc, pokud není trvalá. Pokud jako...
Nevím, jak to bude s třetím, ale 2 předešlí výherci tak nejsou moc aktivní, nebo to si nemyslím. Myslím si, že první výherce Mejzy. Přijde mi, že teda teď je to Mejzman, omlouvám jsem se jmenoval Mejzy, on si tam udělal nějaký změny se jménem a teď je to Mejzman.
All right, opinions on the Czech language. On the scale 1 to 10, how hard does it sound? Fellow Slavic speakers, how much can you understand? As a Russian speaker, I'd say I understand the general topic, maybe the meaning of some phrases, but well, when it's written, it's much easier to comprehend. Thank you to my top 3 patrons who picked Czech, and you too can pick the next language right here. And now on to the final boss of Czech, the grammar. Czech grammar is rich, complex, and if you're coming from English, occasionally terrifying. But at the same time, it is so typically Slavic, so fellow Slavs, you'll feel at home here. 7 grammatical cases, each one changes the endings of nouns, adjectives, and pronouns. Even when you address someone, you change the ending. Pan doktor becomes pane doktor. 3 genders, masculine split into animate and inanimate, feminine and neuter, each with its own declension patterns. No articles. Definiteness is handled through word order and context. And word order is technically SVO, but in practice, extremely flexible. Since cases already mark grammatical roles, Czech can shuffle words around freely. What knows at the end carries the most informational weight, the new stuff or the important stuff. So, Anna už napsala tu disertaci, Anna already wrote that dissertation, can be rearranged depending on emphasis, and every arrangement is grammatically correct. The verb system revolves around aspects. Every verb comes in pairs, imperfective, ongoing, repeated, and perfective, completed, result-oriented. The key trick, a perfective verb in present doesn't mean now, it means future. Pišu means I'm writing, imperfective, present. But napišu means I will write, perfective and future. And multiple negation. In Czech, negation stacks. You negate everything. Nikdo, nikdy, nic takového neviděl. Literally, no one, never, nothing, such, not so. Oh, and remember the diglossia? There are not only vocabulary, but also grammatical differences between standard and common Czech. When standard says mali, common says male, and so on. Declension endings are basically different for everything. But well, don't let Czech intimidate you too much, because, what was
Mali?
now suddenly? Even though you have to keep in mind not 1, but 2 super complex grammars, even though it features some of the hardest sounds on earth and crazy consonant clusters. Okay, alright, get intimidated, that makes sense. But you'll definitely impress people, even by attempting to learn some Czech. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in our next exploration. Dun, 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 dun.
Ended the round. Listen. Most people tap it. I can't even say that.
This video spawned from me watching The Batman 2022 and desperately hoping the sequel is not Barry Keoghan Joker. Please, like, crossing my fingers that prison scene was deleted for a reason. Please, God, let it be a fake out. The ending gave me hope for a take on Batman that is, like, truly unconcerned with catering to a power fantasy and one that focuses on hope. Robert Pattinson, I believe in you. I'm gonna tell you right now, I agree with the dozens of video essays out there that say Batman shouldn't kill and shouldn't use guns and should be kind. They are right, they should say it. I'm gonna say it again later, but I'm gonna add a few other things too. Part 1. So, sub-stories are power fantasies, and I think that
Just realized I do not care about superheroes.
From Up on Poppy Hill is a movie that is not about incest. It's a movie about the relationship between a country's past and future and community bonds and youthful passion. There is, factually speaking, zero incest in the movie. However, we spend approximately half the film very, very worried that there might be. Umi is our protagonist, and upon the film's opening, we already know this poor girl is worked to the bone, a full-time B&B manager and a high schooler, and this is only the beginning of her strife. She develops a bond with fellow student Shun, and all seems well until he sees a photo of her father and his friends while at her house, and heartbreak and confusion ensue. Shun got dropped off as a baby to his parents by Umi's dad, who did not clarify the infant's parentage at all, leading to the couple to assume the baby as his, and never asking any more questions about why the guy with a currently pregnant wife has a different newborn baby. Whose baby is that? And then he dies. So answers are never given. Shun thinks he and Umi have the same dad, gets weird, tells her they're both sad but they both still love each other, and it's really awkward, intense, and yearny. And then Umi's mom returns from studying abroad and Umi asks about the mystery baby, and Jamie Lee Curtis explains that the baby was the child of one of Umi's dad's friends who died, and then his wife also died in childbirth, and he didn't want the baby to go to an orphanage, so he adopted it and then immediately gave it away. They rush to find a guy who is friends with both their dads to get the full story, and then they find out that they aren't related, yay, and then the movie literally ends. Aside from the incest scare, this film has a moderately generic B-plot about saving the historic school club building, but other than that, it really is a teen romance incest scare movie. So at the end of it all, when we find out they aren't related, we're left with one burning question. What the hell was the point of all that? It was a convoluted and stressful series of events that would have left our two leads not just heartbroken, but potentially traumatized and scared off romance forever. The emotional flow of this movie is peaceful and humble life with a sweet teen romance, and then the tense and nerve-wracking possibility of incest, and then beleaguered relief of no incest. I am well aware, by the way, that this is not the only Ghibli film with some uncomfortably familial romance in it. Interesting pattern, I guess. Although, in this film, to this film's credit, they're not related. They got confused, right? Whose baby is that? Whose baby is that? I'm gonna say something that sounds sort of like I'm rocking with incest. I am not, but walk with me here. I think this external barrier to the relationship leads to some really good yearning, very well executed. Is it yearning with incestuous undertones? Yes, sort of. But they aren't actually related, we find that out in the end. I'm not defending incest, I'm defending incest as a narrative device in this film specifically. In a lot of ways, the most vexing part of this movie is that the two leads have some of the best romantic chemistry in maybe any Ghibli movie ever, and like, why did we have to save this for the incest scare movie? Maybe that was the point, to build like additional tension so you really want them to get together and are even more devastated by the possibility of them being related. I don't know. My initial thought when I first watched this movie was that I really wish that they'd taken some artistic liberty and gone for a different central conflict, because my first viewing of this movie gave me some gray hairs. If you are a normal person, even approaching average morality, there's a 99% chance you are not going to watch these scenes and go, "Oh, how cute." you're gonna say, oh my god, aren't they related? And then much of the events and emotional resonance of the second half of the film are overshadowed. But realistically, what external factor could create the same result in the story, wherein the actual relationship is undamaged and they both still feel the way they do about each other but can't be together? Usually that's like a feudalism, arranged marriage, royal court situation that would result in a similar outcome, but neither of those things track in this setting, and they also introduce another conflicting factor, which is potential guilt or loyalty to the third party. So what? What other circumstance could create the effect of mutual affection and full support of the people around them, and yet a complete unwillingness to pursue it? We want to be together, and everyone else around us wants us to be together, but we can't. Genuinely, what else could possibly replicate that other than an incest scare? The two leads are also level-headed, mature, rational, and well-adjusted in just about every way. Their personalities are perfectly compatible and not prone to misunderstandings. It's difficult to conceive of another scenario that could produce this story without massive alteration to several major elements of the plot and characters' personalities. It connects back to the theme of remembering and being connected to your past that runs throughout this film also. It's important to demonstrating the effects of the war too, as the reason a lot of the family tree and relational things are so confusing is because of how the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombings, as well as other aspects of the post-war era, destroyed family trees and created so many orphans. The breakneck pace at which Japan modernized in the 50s and 60s and moved from agricultural to industrial right after two devastating bombings meant a lot of things got left in the dust. I think it's easy for people on the other side of the world to sometimes underestimate how much the bombings changed Japan and how much the aftershock is still felt by its people. Also, does having something taboo or immoral included in a film make it a bad film? No, obviously. But incest is one of those things that basically never feels like it enhances the story unless there's some critique and or unpacking of incest going on, which this movie isn't really concerned with. It's more so concerned with post-war Japan and how that environment could lead to this situation. The reason the incest plot was weird and didn't resonate with a lot of Western viewers is likely in part due to a lack of cultural understanding of the effects of World War II on Japan and what that rebuilding process was like.
Nah,
when a non-Japanese
Japan's
person says the movie is nice but
weird
wish they
with
replaced the incest
incest
for something else, they are missing the fact that the blurry family history was a very real result of the atomic bombs and extremely thematically poignant for a film about the ways in which a nation approaches the future when rebuilding from a war. This is also why it's important that the Tokyo Olympics are upcoming during the events of the film. It's a chance for Japan to move forward from those events and show a new face to the rest of the world. I've seen a lot of Western Ghibli fans who dismiss the incest thing as being pointless and padding out time, or saying something along the lines of using it for shock value to get people's attention, because obviously Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki are famous for their use of cheap shock value. I get sort of frustrated by people calling it cheap as a plot device, or saying it should have been replaced, when it is deeply intertwined with the thematic fabric of the film, unfortunately. Plus, I think there does tend to be an overly rose-tinted and idyllic perception of Japan and Japanese history sometimes. Most Ghibli films are not representational, but somewhat aspirational. This film is very feel-good and relatively peaceful, but there was a great deal of protest and political contention in the early 60s in Japan. It was not necessarily an idyllic time to be living there. Perhaps it's also the fact that Ghibli movies are associated with comfort and feel-goodness, that the fact that something so taboo and uncomfortable is in the film feels incongruent with audience expectation. This disparity makes the movie feel like it's bad art in a way, because it doesn't feel like it fulfills its intended function as being a feel-good family Ghibli film. However, I also think that these complaints originate not only from a lack of cultural context and whatnot, but also from a moralizing instinct many people have.
You didn't even give the cultural context. Japan is just more okay with incest. There's always more in their stories.
Subjects or morally good characters instead of just meeting them where they are. Sort of like how people are constantly arguing about whether Jinx from Arcane is a good person or not, when the whole point of her character is that it's complicated. Accepting that without a black or white moral judgment is difficult for a lot of people. It's either this character is problematic and not a good person, or this part of the movie made me uncomfortable so it's bad / they should take it out, without bothering to look further into why the uncomfortable thing might be there or why the fictional character might do morally ambiguous things. A lot of things are weird and uncomfortable in life, and I think it's more healthy to think about why it exists in the fiction and why it feels uncomfortable than to slam the out of sight, out of mind button. Either way, I think there's a lot of other things to focus on and appreciate about this film too. The dynamic between the two characters and the animation details and how good some of the dialogue actually is and how good the dub is.
Wow, it's really hot.
Fire often is.
We as human beings have complicated every simple gift of the gods.
According to Diogenes.
Shout out to my goat, Jamie Lee Curtis. These things sort of fall to the wayside when the audience fixates on the possible, brother-sister thing. Anyway, I'm not really in favor of incest plot twists like 90% of the time, but this is an exception for me. I think the setting, historical context, and execution justify its existence, and also in fact the film really just doesn't work the same way without it. It is kind of integral to the function. Anyway, this movie's good, and I understand why people are kind of put off by the whole, do we have the same dad subplot, because it is uncomfortable. It was kind of weird. The first time I watched it, I was also pretty weirded out. I kind of had a similar thought process, but the more I sit with it and watch it a second time, it's like, no, I get why this is here. And it's definitely not a pro-incest movie. It is generally regarded as a absolute obstacle to there being a romantic relationship, which is generally something I would agree with. So, yes, the movie has a weird, uncomfortable twist, but it historically, contextually makes sense within the setting, and also, just because there's a thing that makes me uncomfortable in this movie does not mean I'm willing to jump to the conclusion that the movie itself is flawed on that basis. Give it a shot. Give the Ghibli incest movie a shot. I broke out into a sweat trying to defend the incest movie. That's probably not good.
Oh, that's a good track. What the fuck? Hilarious?
Polarizing game, I think, in the sense that people either love Final Fantasy VIII or hate Final Fantasy VIII, and there's not really very much in between, and people are very vehement about it. There are people who are like, it's the worst game ever made, it's atrocious, it's horrible, and then there's people who are like, if you didn't like it, it's because you're really stupid and didn't understand the gameplay systems, and you're an idiot and you're a dumb, stupid idiot. And I would like to posit that maybe the truth is somewhere in between these two things. This game is a big trip down memory lane for me. 7 is technically the first Final Fantasy game I ever played, but 8 was the first I ever finished. I have a lot of criticisms of this game, honestly, despite the special place in my heart it occupies, and I mean like a lot, and my goal for this video is to stay under an hour, but we'll see how that pans out for me. If you're a Final Fantasy VIII hater, I'm probably not going to be nearly mean enough for your taste, and if you're a Final Fantasy VIII lover, I'm probably not going to be nearly positive enough for your taste, so laying that groundwork out right now. With that being said, here's a really long video about why I think Final Fantasy VIII is like a 7 out of 10. So, easily the most talked about and controversial, I suppose, element of Final Fantasy VIII is its combat/gameplay system. It's weird. It's weird by Final Fantasy standards, it's weird by RPG standards. It's definitely very unique. They have the junctioning system where you draw spells from enemies and you stack these spells. You have, 10, 15, 50, 100 of them, and then you junction them to your stats. If you have a lot of a really good spell and you junction it to like your strength stat will be like really crazy stupid high. And so it is a very interesting system in that it allows for a lot of ways to play the game, and it allows for a very customizable experience. That said, it's got a steep ass learning curve. I will tell you that right now. I completely understand why people do not like the junctioning system. I was watching that tutorial with like 3 glasses of wine in my system, and
that's not why people necessarily dislike it. It's 'cause it takes so long to. It's like, oh, let's just sit there and draw the spells. Doesn't exactly create the most entertaining gameplay loop. There were better ways to get spells. Why would you do that?
I was not having much fun either. In practice, it's fine. It's not the worst gameplay system, but it's not the best either. I managed and have managed with this system, but it's rather time-consuming. So the thing that you are junctioning is a Guardian Force, which this game lovingly abbreviates to GF the entirety of the time, which is just the bit that keeps on giving. The junctioning system itself is, like I said, it has a steep learning curve, and I personally am not a fan of having to do homework for the video games I play just to beat it. And like I said, I played this game a long time ago when I was a kid, and I replayed it for this video. There was a couple times where I was like, wait, what? And I had to go look it up and like check forums and like look at what other people did. And while like there's a certain sense of community in that, I don't always love when like I have to pause the game and get out my phone and make like 4 or 5 Google searches before I know what's going on. Especially because you can get like 3 or 4 or 5 submenus deep in the junctioning system. Especially like, there's stuff like, for example, if you want one of the characters, Renoa, her limit breaks involve her dog getting shot at the enemies and then exploding. I love when the dog explodes. And if you want to teach the dog new moves, you have to go into like the status menu and then to like this other thing, then you have to hit the left directional arrow pad 2 times, and then you can select what the dog will learn. Functionally, I understand, I don't know where else you would put that, but there's a lot of little things like this where you will just be like deep in menus, and they're just like the same monotonous gray, and it's confusing, and it's just a menu system that is a bit dense, and it takes a while to get used to, and I think it certainly is something that has scared a lot of people off of this game, is just like, you start and they are slamming you with this just dreary gray tutorial for like 15 minutes. And another thing about the junction system is when you switch between parties, because sometimes your party is split up into 2 groups and you'll have to switch back and forth between them during gameplay sections, specifically like story-heavy sections. And the sections, especially like the parade during Disc 1, which we'll get to later, it's a huge pain because you have to switch back and forth between your 2 parties pretty frequently. And especially at this point in Disc 1, you're probably not going to have enough GFs to like have full junctions on all 6 of your party members all the time. You might only have 4 or 5 GFs at this point in the game, potentially less if you missed a couple of them. So you do have to swap junctions like every single time your party switches. And there is a junction swapping mechanic that'll just one-to-one move everything over between characters. But if you want specific abilities on a specific character, or you want to actually personalize junctioning at all, it can really disrupt the flow of the gameplay and of the story, because you'll spend like several minutes in sub-menu hell moving everything around in the middle of what's supposed to be like an urgent, intense situation. Yep. I hate that the game just randomly undoes all of your junctions at various points. Like, Sometimes you go into the menu and they're like, oh, oops, there's nothing junction to anyone. And if you go into a battle right now, you won't be able to do anything. And like, there is no like cue that has happened. You just have to like check every now and again to make sure they haven't like unjunctioned all of your work. Another complaint I have, I suppose, which could arguably be categorized as world design as well as gameplay, is that a lot of times when I set the game down and came back to play like the next day or something, I would completely forget what I was tasked with and wander around for like 20 minutes trying to find the next plot thing, because there isn't really a way to check if you don't remember like one line of dialogue somebody told you. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. There was still like very often no way to check what I was supposed to be doing or where I was supposed to be going. There's also a fair bit of pixel hunting and moving around and standing in just the right place to get the proper action or line of dialogue or whatever you need to progress, and that can be pretty frustrating. What? You bastard of a game. What do you mean? What do you mean? I had to hit it at that exact angle? God. Both the pixel hunting and this like somewhat hands-off approach to letting the player know where they need to go is arguably just a product of its time. Late 90s games are famously known for having very few qualms about letting a player get stuck by way of something arbitrary. The game isn't hard at all if you have a lot of really powerful spells to junction, but it is conversely really, really difficult if you don't. And if you don't keep up your stock of magic diligently, especially around the endgame, the difficulty can spike really high. Which this sounds obvious, I know, because junctioning is the whole gameplay system, and I'm aware it sounds ridiculous to say the game is hard if you don't engage with its core system, but I think it's worth mentioning because I feel you can technically get away with only half-assing it for a long while in this game. And part of the reason it is possible to get away with junctioning weaker spells for so long is that you do have GF attacks which deal a lot more damage, so you can kind of fall back on that and spam it if you don't have like actually good junctions. Another thing too though is having junction magic means if you want your stats to stay as high as they are, you don't really want to cast most of your spells, because then your stats will go down because you'll have fewer spells junctioned to your stat, which can lead to like relying on regular attacks, limit breaks, or GF attacks over spells, and sometimes you'll only have like one party member casting it all, like support spells, and almost nothing else, which is kind of a weird situation for the game's magic system, especially for a Final Fantasy game, for magic to be something that you're so de-incentivized to use other than very specific spells in very specific instances. Also, the battle assist mode they have in the remaster, because the remaster is what I played for this video, the battle assist mode they have in the remaster is kind of crazy. Like, they just have this default button that's always there that allows you to just go god mode. It's bananas from like a game design balance perspective. Like, it's crazy. It is, however, really useful for me to go back and get additional footage for this video. Like, it's really convenient and therefore I cannot complain too much. But also, if you're not using it to get footage for something like I was, it's a little bit like, why is this here? While most of this game is exploration and turn-based combat, Final Fantasy VIII is also fond of a random-ass minigame with the most insane and evil input lag you've ever experienced in your life. The Paratrooper minigame was especially crazy, plus the one with the dragon. All of them are like that. The train one wasn't so bad. The Paratrooper one was the worst. But there, every now and again, it'll just be like, surprise, and you have to do something like completely different from regular gameplay. And you know, while I appreciate some variety, some of the like the input lag on these little minigames is just so crazy. It's so crazy that like it's just insane. Wow, whoa, the input lag on this is insane. What's with the input lag on the Y? Dude. What? So I'm going to do a quick lightning round of a few more aspects of the game I have some thoughts on, but I don't really want to go too terribly in depth for the sake of the runtime of this video. The cutscenes. The cutscene game was crazy, like actually baller, and it was a very big deal when this game came out how nice a lot of their cutscenes looked. It's been praised a lot for the advancements in 3D game cutscenes, and its use of motion capture as well as some pretty complicated hair are two very impressive points of that animation. The waltz between Squall and Rinoa was even used as the PS2 tech demo, I believe. And the fact that they were using motion capture was certainly unusual for video games at the time and something of an innovation. I also think the integration they had between cutscenes and gameplay was relatively clever at times. Now that's jail. There was a lot of transferring between exploration and gameplay into cutscene, back into gameplay, back into cutscene, especially during the parade segment. Also, everyone has like really shiny hair in the cutscenes. That's not important. It just stood out to me. Like they have like reflective hair. Like you could maybe use it as a mirror type shiny. And there's one last thing I'm gonna put a pin in with the cutscenes, and that's that I'm of the opinion that the cutscenes often offer stronger and more compelling characterization in their short runtime than the game proper does with pages of dialogue. The visual design of Final Fantasy VIII is also something that I find to be quite strong. Some of the environments are a little goofy looking, I'll be honest, but others are really, really wonderful. The inside of Balam Garden, slightly sci-fi school, cool stuff, very, very interesting layout. The outside, whoa, this game also has a very summer feel about it. The developer said it was a conscious effort to make 8 brighter and lighter than 7, in visual design especially. A lot of the scenes with a gentle breeze in the ocean and blues and greens and yellows. It's a distinctly optimistic sci-fi setting compared to 7's dystopia. This is technically audio design, but they actually play like bird sounds a lot during quieter scenes and seagull cries when you're near the ocean, which really adds to this feeling. There's a real Y2K futurism undercurrent to the design too, especially in Disc 3 and S-Star. It gets very, like, there's a lot of blues and greens, there's a lot of very sleek, plasticky looking textures. It's very, what's that one 3D movie with the kid and the robot family? My brain said Jetsons, but that's not it. It's something else. It's got the time traveling kid in the future with his family, and he's like, I hate the future, I want to go back, whatever. This isn't important, but now I'm thinking about it, and it's kind of similar. And lastly, we have the soundtrack. It's phenomenal, and there's no point mincing words about it. The opera/church choir-esque chanting and singing, and the haunting music box, evil fairy tale strings that kick in when the sorceress is around, incredible. I think during the parade in Ultimisia's castle at the end, there are some especially strong tracks. My heater just turned on, you can hear that, that's great. There are randomly some scenes with no music at all though. Because the game has no voice acting, if there's no ambient seagulls or cicadas or music, some scenes are quite literally dead silent, which, when used intentionally, can be great, but it doesn't always feel like that was the case. What? Where are you going? What? Oh no. What is this scene? Completely silent? Oh no, she's gone, off screen. Why did she just walk off? There was also the lead single ballad situation off the soundtrack Eyes on Me by Faye Wong. It was a mega hit in Japan and one of the most successful songs from a video game ever. I love me some Faye Wong, her stuff is great. It's just a nice song, it's just a good song. It's just a nice, pretty song that they play at a good moment. And I respect that.
Darling, so there you are, with that look on your face.
And if I said this soundtrack was better than 7, what if? Where am I going? So, you play as Squall, a student at a fancy military academy school thing called the Garden, and begin just as he's about to take his bar exam or something. You deal with Cypher, your evil school rival guy, and then you go on your first mission and you pass, and Cypher fails. Then you go to a very nice party and dance with a very nice girl, and your teacher says a couple of very weird things to you. Why is she into us? That's weird. Whatever, I'm keeping an open mind. Ugh. You're then sent out on your first job in Timber to carry out a ridiculous train heist that is functionally impossible but works somehow anyway, and you find a body double of the dictator/president you were trying to kidnap off the train, and then realize the freedom fighters who hired you are total amateurs and fell for false information. During the train heist is when you officially meet Renoa, the main love interest whom you danced with at the party. During the first mission is also when you start having your first Laguna flashbacks, in which you play as a different character from about 17 years ago, and these flashbacks will continue to crop up with inconsistent frequency throughout the rest of the game, and we will talk about them in greater detail later, but this is where they start. So, shortly after failing the train heist, the president of Galbadia, the guy you were trying and failing to kidnap earlier, gets attacked by Cypher on live television, and then you flee the city with Renoa and the rest of your team. Cypher allegedly gets taken to court even though you saw him walk off with the sorceress at the end of that sequence, and it's still really unclear why he even attacked the president. I still don't know. He was just really angry, I guess. Then, you flee to Delling City, and you get hired to assassinate the brand new Galbadian ambassador, the sorceress Adia, during a parade, and things go pretty far south. Adia kills the president, and then everyone starts cheering. They never explain why no one reacts to Adia killing the president. The only criticism, and I mean the only criticism I really truly have of the parade sequence/assassination sequence of Disc 1 in this game is the submenu hell, which I mentioned earlier, but other than that, I would say it's a genuinely phenomenal part of the game, and quite possibly the strongest section in the whole thing. The transition between cutscenes and gameplay is really cool and frequent, so you're not stuck in an unskippable 5-minute cutscene and then a bunch of dreary gameplay. There's much more back and forth, which does help in building a sense of tension and urgency. And it still manages to make it clear when you're in cutscene and when you're not, so you always know you're supposed to be doing something. The frantic tension from the opera circus music and the decadent parade combined with his assassination plan going right in huge quotation marks by the skin of its teeth is so atmospherically strong, and the stakes feel so clear that it is just a fundamentally fun and enjoyable part of this game with very strong visual and music direction. So after the failed assassination attempt, you get arrested and a bunch of stuff happens there, and then you find out that there's like a time witch who's been like inhabiting different women's bodies throughout time and like jumping from host to host, and at some point Renoa gets possessed, and it's a whole thing. This was my attempt at a story summary, but it's gonna be kind of hard, and we might have to kind of go by the seat of our pants on this a little bit, because in true Final Fantasy fashion, the story starts with an interesting and clear premise and quickly becomes wildly complicated to the point of potentially requiring a cork-board string. And we haven't even briefly discussed what's going on with Laguna and all of those flashbacks, right? To the story's credit, you could probably sum it up by being like, there's an evil time witch who wants to compress all of time and we have to stop her. Smaller obstacles ensue on the way to that goal. But when I tell you that just like, things just happen in this game. Like things just happen. And there is often not a clear explanation, and they don't seem to relate to other parts of the game. And there's a lot of elements that crop up once and never again. So giving a cohesive story summary on Final Fantasy VIII is like herding cats. The game is split up into 4 discs. Well, I think it was at the time of release, but it still kind of like has breakpoints for each section of the game still, like narratively. So we're still going to use that as a point of reference for the story. And in disc 1 in particular, well, I think the pacing in the middle is a little bit fast. It maintains a sense of clarity and stakes that wanes later on in the story. You know what you're doing and why for the most part. The court thing with Cypher is never really explained, nor why he wants to kill the president. And you see him again at the parade, and it looks like he never went to jail or court at all, and then you never talk about it again. But Quistis was like, there was a whole trial, and then he died, and they killed him, and they don't explain that to you because he's just back. So it's like, did he jailbreak? Did he even show up to court? Who told Quistis that he died, and why did they tell her that? But they don't tell you. You don't get to know. Also, like, what do you mean sacrificing himself for us? He didn't do us any favors. He just tried to kidnap the president. And we tried to stop him, but like, why did he do that? Who was he helping? How was that supposed to help anyone? When did he get to court? That, and like I said, the pacing in Disc 1 quite in the middle can be really crazy because major socio-political events play out over the course of like one in-game afternoon, and the pacing on it is just so, it borders on surrealism, how insane some of the pacing of events are, especially when you're in Timber and you're dealing with the Galbadian army. Like the military presence here, the Galbadian military presence makes more sense if it's like more spread out, just logistically. Like if we'd come here and done our failed attempt at kidnapping the president, and then the next day we went to the TV station and they were like, oh, there's an increase in military presence, like they sent a train of soldiers overnight. The TV broadcasting happens, and now everyone's up in a frenzy about it, so we hide out at this lady's house and we spend the night, and then the next morning she's like, all right, it's kind of weird, but they're really abruptly pulling out. I think maybe because the president's leaving, they're taking a lot of the military force with them. But it's giving you a window to leave town. That would logistically make a lot more sense than like the military presence increase and then decrease like during daylight hours, not even 24 hours, like within 12 hours, and everyone in the world had enough time to react to and have an opinion on it that quickly, which I think is strange. Disc 2 is really slow in the middle and then bananas in the last hour. You start strong with the jailbreak sequence post-parade and like the missile sabotage mission, and you get a little bit of a character moment for Selfie, one of your party members, but not very much. We'll talk about that later. And then you just wander around for a while. And then in the last hours when you get a really, really bad plot twist that's really horrible that everybody who plays this game it's infamous, we already know about it, but we'll get to it later. And then you have a fight in your guard, which can fly now. Your school is a mobile battleship now, and you fight another mobile battleship school. Wildly impractical, so much, it's amazing. Disc 3 is where you go to space to heal Renoa because she got Time Witch possessed at the final battle of Disc 3. You were able to go to space because you were sent there by this like isolationist high-tech nation called Estar, and you find out that the big bad evil Time Witch is named Ultimisia, and her goal is to compress all of time for some reason. She doesn't really have a reason. I guess she's just really hellbent on some hardcore alone time. Disc 4 is much shorter than the other three, and is basically just the final mission at Ultimisia's castle and then the endgame. Honestly, it's pretty strong, but we'll talk about the ending in more depth later on. So the quality and pacing of this game kind of bounces around a lot. The game excels in longer story sequences like the parade or the Battle of the Gardens at the end of Disc 2, but gets confused and messy with the pacing in other sections. It's sort of jarring how well-paced some of the more scripted sequences are compared to the more relaxed or just less plot-heavy parts of the game. So the Laguna flashbacks, you play as him intermittently throughout the whole game, mostly in Disc 1, with lesser frequency as the game goes on. Him and his two friends, Kiros and Ward, are Galbadian soldiers fighting the Estar army 17 years ago when the last time the Time Witch possessed somebody. She started a war, so she's bad news. You play as Laguna and just seemingly only tangentially related events to the main plot of the game, just sort of what he's doing, what he's up to. And a big part of this is how he knows this girl alone, who is plot important to the like time compression stuff because she can send people's consciousness back in time, and also we know her. She's like Squall's adoptive orphanage sister. We'll get to that later. We will get to that later. Her time abilities are important for beating Ultimisia, and you need her help in the endgame. We have to do a bunch of Laguna flashbacks, apparently, to know who she is. Laguna is just kind of like freeballing, doing whatever, and then ends up president of Estar, and then you meet him, and you're like, oh, that's Laguna. All right, peace out, let's go fight Ultimisia. And it's like, this is this guy that you've been having these like dream hallucination episodes as. You and two of your party members frequently get like blasted into dream world, and you live as these other people for a while. And first of all, they're super laissez-faire, don't care about the dream world possession shit that's happening. They like don't care. They pass out randomly, uncontrollably, and like live as another person, and they wake up and they're like, oh yeah, how's our guy doing? Like they don't care at all. It's so weird. I don't understand why they don't care. The amount of time dedicated to the Laguna flashbacks makes you think that there is going to be some kind of big tie-in to the main story that functionally just doesn't happen. We're gonna get a little bit fourth wall break here, but this is potentially due to just them forgetting about it. There is an interview with the developers in which they mentioned that there was an original plan to have those two storylines tie together, and then they just kind of like lost it, is what they called what happened. So part of that is, frankly, that they just maybe didn't do it. The other thing here, though, is that you don't ever really get any straight-up confirmation in the game, although it is heavily implied that Laguna is Squall's father, and that Rain, the woman who you meet in one of his flashbacks, is Squall's mother. It's heavily implied that this is the case, but they do not say it outright to you at any point. But in any of the supplemental material and developer interviews and whatever, they just outright openly refer to Laguna as Squall's father, like all the time. Like it's just like a basic fact of the game, when it is in fact not explicitly stated at any point in the story. On top of the issues in terms of writing, of things not being explained, and the pacing being kind of wonky, there's also tonally some really weird stuff. Squall getting emotional at Renoa's bedside post-possession and she's comatose, and then immediate instantaneous jump to Laguna sword fighting a dragon with clown music playing. And like I mentioned earlier, the pacing, buck wild sometimes. We mentioned Cypher in the court. He got arrested to court, executed, not executed, back at the parade. That was like one day. It's all one, like late afternoon to evening. Like you don't. And then there's the events in Timber where the soldiers show up and then leave, and then they leave again, and then like the military is making big moves in like 15-minute time spans, which is crazy. And there's also, when you get to a fishing town in Disc 2 of the game called Fisherman's Horizon, there is a scene where you have literally landed and been on shore for like minutes, possibly single-digit minutes. And they go, we don't want you here, you might bring violence. And you're like, well, okay. And then you walk back the way you came, and they go, we're being invaded! We're being invaded right now! This is the part where we've been in town for like 3 minutes, and they're like, the soldiers are invading! We've been here like 10 minutes! And we weren't even planning to come here, we got here on accident. The romance between Squall and Rinoa is the true center stage. Everything else is just kind of happening around it. Squall himself doesn't really give a rat's ass one way or the other. He just cares about protecting Rinoa and the rest of his friends, which is why some of it gets confusing because of how complicated all the things happening in the background are. You'd figure if the plot was meant to just be a reason to bring the characters together / put them in situations and serve as a backdrop to the romance, it would be a little less confusing and would maybe not involve compressing all of time. Thematically, it's a bit less focused compared to 7. It's hard to say what 8 is really about. The marketing team and the developers say it's about love, but in practice, a lot more than that happens in the game. 7 is very clearly about environmentalism, class disparity, memories, and troubled past on top of the usual Final Fantasy themes of found family and corrupt government / war. 8 is potentially about a lot of things. Most of them it never addresses. The whole child soldier industrial complex goes completely unquestioned, and there seems to be some kind of through line on time, the past, and memories, but it never goes anywhere and lacks purposeful framing. You could argue for the theme of living in the present, but you'd have to do all the heavy lifting yourself, as the game doesn't ever really directly go there. It maintains the found family and corrupt government common to the franchise, but it's hard to say the game is really about love, especially when there are other entries in the series that have romances with equal or greater depth. It can also be a bit confusing because while the romance is the focus, it also isn't a lot of the runtime. For a game meant to center around Squall and Rinoa, it spends a lot of time not doing that, and does make some effort to flesh out the rest of its supporting cast to its credit, especially Zell, Adia, Cid, Alone, Laguna, Kyros, and Selphie. Before Disc 3, there were only a handful of openly romantic scenes between Squall and Rinoa, and Squall is clocked out for like half of them. There's the waltz, there's the Fisherman's Horizon date, and a little dialogue here and there. Prior to Disc 3, Squall also does express a bit more concern for Rinoa's safety than for everyone else, but she's also the least trained and most often in peril, so the concern comes across as generally practical and rational. Everyone else is a trained soldier and not actively a hostage as often as Rinoa is, so it's really easily read as simply being worried because she's objectively the most vulnerable. Post Disc 3, he freaks out a lot more when she's in danger, which I think is pretty clearly meant to be an indicator that he's developed feelings for her. And on the note of discussing the romance, I am sorry to compare it to 7 so much, so I'll also compare it to 15. I would argue that 7 is the game that is structurally and setting-wise the most similar to 8, while 8 is the most similar to 15 in its focus on romance, especially in terms of how the game was marketed. Well, an attempt at that in 15's case. They almost made a story with a very central romance plot, and then halfway through the script exploded, I think, maybe. 8 comes across as a lot more committed to its romance. Luna Freya is a character in name only, while Rinoa is a much more realized person. 15 also tried to do the whole big central love story angle, but in my opinion 8 did it far better. The love story, or whatever you call what that was my least favorite part of 15 by far. To be clear, I liked a lot of the other aspects of 15, I'm just bitter about the lost potential and the trigger-happy game of Mad Libs that they were seemingly playing when assembling the game's story. It's also worth a brief comparison to Final Fantasy X, as there's also a sort of mostly central love story there too. It's interesting that despite 8 being the Final Fantasy quote-unquote about love, 10 is often regarded as the most successful central love story in the franchise, and frankly I sort of agree with this. The romance between Squall and Rinoa is largely successful, but it's not without its flaws. Squall especially jumps from catching feelings to living and dying for Rinoa, and it feels a little bit like we missed a stage of his affection growing. A few lines in his inner monologue here and there to express a little more favor towards her would bridge that gap a bit more. Rinoa is better, as she's rather clearly into Squall from the very beginning and it only gets stronger, but other Final Fantasy games like 7 or 9 or 13 have a romance as well. It doesn't take as much plot or screen time as 8 or 10, and in fact Final Fantasy 13's romance doesn't even involve the main character, but it is between 2 of your party members, and in fact Lightning actively objects to it, and frankly so do I. This is all to say there's a bit of irony in the fact that 8 is marketed and remembered as the Final Fantasy game about love when there's so many other Final Fantasy games with love stories, and arguably better ones as we've just gone over. Except for 13. I'm sorry, I did not like that guy. I don't like that guy at all. There are a lot of things in Final Fantasy VIII, like Cypher's bizarre court ordeal from Disc 1, that happen throughout. One of the major ones is Squall gets impaled to a massive degree at the end of Disc 1 and wakes up at the beginning of Disc 2 with no wound whatsoever, and they do not explain it. And you can theorize to hell and back why that happened, but it's just genuinely one big question mark. Squall himself even acknowledges that the wound is gone, and he's like, how did that happen? And then never asks that question again. It's never explained. We don't know if someone healed him. We don't know if the wound was fake or if he hallucinated getting stabbed, but we have a cutscene for that, and lots of people saw it. There's numerous occasions where things like this happen, where they just switch gears super abruptly and do not explain why Cypher is not in court anymore, how he got out, or how he got there. And they don't explain why Squall just isn't missing a third of his torso anymore. He just isn't. Moving on. And they are very much not trying to hide it, which is the bizarre part of all of this. Like I said, in the writing, they acknowledge that the wound is gone. Squall goes, that's weird. Such a bizarre thing to do from a writing standpoint, to leave massive questions like this and not explain them and not even connect them to anything else. Unless it was something insane like they already made the cutscene, but then they were like, we don't want him to be injured for the rest of the game for plot reasons, so we're just gonna make it vanish. Actually, I would not put that past them, realistically. There's a lot of scenes where I found myself saying things like, yeah, whatever, this might as well happen. Or something along the lines of, what? Okay, whatever, sure. Because the fuck it, this is happening now energy is so strong in this game. Unexplainable or underexplained things happen and the game moves on so fast it sort of forces you to move on too. Oh. Oh, I hope he's okay. What? What happened? Wasn't it digging away? Where did you guys come from? Why are we at a garage? How'd we get down? This fucking game, man. And for our next segment, a non-exhaustive list of things Final Fantasy VIII never explains. Cypher's court ordeal, the stab wound disappearing, why Irvine does not go to jail like everyone else involved in the assassination attempt, why the sorceress even wants Cypher as a goon in the first place, why are the porcupine dog Moombas working in the prison, how you get out of the prison and get vehicles, why Headmaster Sid claims he has no idea what's in the basement of Balam Garden, and it's from when the garden, quote, used to be a bomb shelter, but then later says he built the garden himself with his wife and Norg, what the ramifications of killing Norg are, why the Galbadian warship thing that you fight in Fisherman's Horizon is hostile if the people inside are the other half of your party, why Raijin and Fujin are independently doing a hostile takeover of Balam Town, why Irvine was willing to leave you in jail even though he was the only one who remembered the bad orphan gang amnesia plot twist we'll get to later, where Headmaster Sid is during literally anything important, why Squall is put in charge when Quistis outranks him pretty significantly and even ironically ends up handling some of his responsibilities anyway, why Renoa specifically is selected to inherit sorcerer's powers and what that even entails, why Laguna randomly decides to become the president of Estar instead of raising Alone, / why was Alone under such strict protection if there hadn't been a sorceress in 17 years, / why, if she was supposed to be under protection, she was left in an unsupervised jungle full of hostile dinosaurs that the school just had for some reason. Sorry for getting worked up. I didn't even realize how angry I was getting towards the end there. This game occupies the same part of my brain that houses, like, hazy summer memories from when I was a kid, so in a strange way, despite how impassioned I just was, the mountain of unexplained events doesn't bother me nearly as much as it would in another game or another story, and it's worth mentioning because it's a pretty strong bias for me to have. That said, it does still bother me a lot. I think there's quite a few things here that you could come up with an explanation for if you squint and infer and assume a few things or reference extra textual material, remember the corkboard and string, but within the story proper there just isn't any kind of clarity. That's not storytelling. That's implying there's a cool story somewhere in here and then refusing to tell it. In fact, many of these scenes habitually accidentally imply more depth than was ever intentionally meant to be there. How do I know this? You'll see. I have a few words about this game's lead writer's approach. I will say, credit where it's due, the dialogue is pretty solid for the most part, but anytime someone has to, like, insult someone else, they always say the goofiest things in the world. You're on my oh no, not the tough nut to crack list. That pathetic married couple, because that's a thing someone would say. There are also some really random-ass scenes that I think could have been modified a bit. I get that a bit of quirkiness is true to brand for Final Fantasy, but in particular, the band practice scene and whatnot, and the lead up to Squall and Renoa's date, being that the rest of the party, despite none of them being able to play an instrument, they say so, and then they suddenly can, and Selphie's whole being sad about the stage being ruined from inside the garden when it started flying, so we'll do another band thing was out of place considering that we just defended an innocent town from Galbadian invasion, and that's what she cared about. I think it should have been the people of Fisherman's Horizon playing the music and celebrating, avoiding an invasion, and we just attend. It makes a lot more sense and gives more life to the spirit and culture of the town, and just logically tracks better than Zell can play sax now. Piano. What? A grand piano? I also get very frustrated by how the other characters habitually give Squall so much shit about his leadership that he was saddled with against his will, mind you. And he's doing the right thing. He will be doing something completely irrational and they will just start tearing into him. And they're hypocritical. They change their minds every other scene. They frequently stand around and do nothing to help their situation, then go, Squall, do something. Alright, girl, what's he supposed to do, lie? Alright, Squall, do something. Alright. Damn. He just hit every fucking button. King, I love him. Dude, there's a classroom of like literal 10-year-olds that were also worried about dying. And he's the leader. He can't just drop everything and run off. That would make him a bad leader. He needs to think about what everything else is happening before he makes decisions like that. He's doing the right thing. Oh my god, everybody has something to say. When I don't prioritize Renoa, like 4 people take turns calling me heartless. But when I do prioritize Renoa, mind you, in a not an active combat situation, we are in between battles, we are in rest. When I do prioritize her, it's like, oh, you're a leader, you have other things to worry about. Pick a battle. Pick something to be mad at me about, because we're like under siege, and they're like, I can't believe you're not thinking about Renoa. And then we're in times of peace, and we are thinking about Renoa, and they're like, you don't have time for this. God! So that god-awful plot twist I was name-dropped 3 times before this, we're finally here. We finally get to talk about it. At the end of Disc 2, one of your party members, Irvine, while you're at a basketball court in the recently bombed Travia Garden, turns around and is like, I have a story, and then drops on everyone, after some admittedly a little bit of mutual discussion, that apparently everyone in your party except for Renoa are actually all orphans from the same orphanage and they all forgot. There is no setup for this. There is no hinting. There is no anything leading up to this. They just drop it, curveball left field, let's go, like, no worries. And this conversation deadass starts by Irvine just going like, guys, guess what? And apparently, their theory that they come up with amongst themselves that is not ever really truly confirmed within the plot, nor is it resolved, is that junctioning a Guardian Force, or RGFs, as we lovingly call them, occupies the part of your brain that holds memories, and junctioning a GF for extended periods of time is the thing that causes memory loss. We have no real evidence for this. That is not purely circumstantial. And we never confirm whether this is true, but they drop an amnesia plot twist on you, and then blame the GFs, and then dip, and don't really elaborate on it further than that. Also, side note, Irvine categorically does not act like he knows a damn thing before this. He's the only one that remembers, allegedly, but like I said, he was gonna leave us in jail. Dude, you just killed him. and leave with Renoa, and now he's harping on about family and staying together. The other part of this plot twist is that the sorceress Adia is also your orphanage matron from when you were a child. You find out that you had an orphanage matron in the first place during this scene, so the matron is the sorceress being the revelation doesn't work, because the fact that we had a matron is also a revelation. They probably forget about all of this too. It comes up like one more time and then virtually never again, and then at a certain point they stop talking about the fact that they were like siblings sort of for a period of time. It's a very bad plot twist. I cannot, explaining it to you does not do it justice. It is a very bad plot twist. There's no setup, there's no payoff, it doesn't functionally change anything about the story, it just makes it worse. It doesn't affect your status quo, it doesn't change the decisions you make going forward, it doesn't do anything. We were gonna fight the sorceress anyway. We were gonna do all of this anyway. The fact that she's our orphanage matron just means that we talk to her a little bit more after we defeat her, but like, it's a ridiculously bad plot twist. I can't stress this enough, because it's also just like a bizarre conversation. And also, Renoa just has to stand there through the whole thing just to watch these 5 idiots be like, oh my god, we all came from the same orphanage and for—
That's probably one of the worst arguments I think I've ever heard in my life. It doesn't change the fact that we're still going to kill her anyway. It does not change the fact that you're killing your orphanage matron. Seems like a really big deal now. It seems to change a lot. I don't remember the plot, mind you, so I don't know if their reactions are of people that used to be connected to this person are upset that this is happening, but that would be the game's fault if it wasn't like that. And I do agree that the plot twist is fucking horrendous. Because there are so many good implications that exist there, they're just not going to be pursued. Because FF8 is not competently written at all. A very poorly written game with a bunch of really good ideas. Why is there a fucking moth in my room? Get the fuck away from my PC.
God, and Cypher too. Oh my god, Cypher was also the orphanage, that's important. Cypher's part of the orphanage gang. She's part of our orphanage gang. And Renoa just has to stand there and be like, damn, that's crazy. Because she's not part of the orphanage gang, and she's just watching all of this unfold, and it's just kind of like, well... So, I'm going to distinguish between the end game and the ending. The end game, being Ultimisia's castle and the cutscene of Squall and Renoa finding each other in compressed time, is very successful in my opinion. The soundtrack and setting, forging through numerous bosses in a Baroque castle, home to a sci-fi sorceress. I do find the section that takes place in Ultimisia's castle, where you have to undo the seals, to be far too long, even if it is atmospherically strong, and has some cool ideas. It drags on for a hot minute, and I think we could have done with maybe sealing half of what we sealed. I don't know why we had to seal our ability to save. That kind of pissed me off a little, I'm gonna be real with you. I was kind of upset that you sealed away my ability to save my game. Thanks. I do not like that the final battle selects 3 of your party members at random. That was annoying. The ending narratively it's fine. Everyone kind of just goes back to their normal life and keeps working at the garden with still basically no acknowledgement of the fact that Sid and Adia were snatching up orphans and troubled kids for the last 15 plus years and funneling them from orphanage to military academy to an early grave. The ending is something of a complete return to status quo with minimal change to the world proper, except Cypher likes to go fishing now. The only real difference is Squall and Renoa are dating now and everyone is a bit closer as friends, while still not really talking about the orphanage thing. It's a bit underwhelming in my opinion that the journey to fight an all-powerful time sorceress who has partially possessed one of your party members resolves with minimal consequences. I don't think anyone dies in this game at all, except maybe the president of Delling City. There's the dead seeds you encounter in compressed time, but I'd say it's debatable how much unnamed NPCs in an alternate reality count as legitimate character death in a narrative sense. It does succeed in achieving a lighter tone because of this, and it is plausibly in service of the maybe intentional theme of living in the present that we gently suggested earlier in this video, that we return to such a status quo, but that leaves us with the issue that functionally it's not a terribly satisfying or interesting ending even if it was intentional. I don't hate this ending, but it can be it can make you emotionally feel like nothing happened at all, when the end state is so similar to the beginning with minor changes. While plenty of events did transpire, the lack of change in the setting and characters, except for Squall and Renoa, can make those events feel meaningless in retrospect, and with a game this long, I don't think it's a good idea to make your audience feel as though they have been wasting time. At the same time, I quite like the last cinematic cutscene, and the bond it demonstrates between the party, a bond I wish we got more of in the game proper, and this is one of the most direct examples of what I said before when I mean some of these cutscenes display a level of bond and personality between these characters that we just don't see in the actual game that I find genuinely quite compelling, but it's just locked in this cutscene that plays during the credits. It is a good cutscene, it makes me smile, like I like it a lot, and everyone's hair is still very shiny. I would strongly prefer, however, if it played either before the credits or was more organically integrated with them. It's really small, and it's the final cutscene being like in the corner while credits scroll regular style. I just like it because it goes like credits with a little square where the cutscene plays, and then just credits, no cutscene, and then the rest of the final cutscene. And it keeps tricking you into thinking it's over and there's not anything more, and so the flow is not that good, in my opinion. I wish they would have just played it all as one big cutscene and then the credits. Alright, so this next section is just going to be going over a few tidbits from a handful of developer interviews that I could find translated that I found interesting and or relevant to some of the criticisms I make in this video. So first and foremost, they talk a fair bit about what the previous connection between Squall and Laguna was like. While Alone's role in the story feels clear, the level of focus on Laguna never quite feels justified, especially considering that his connection to Squall is left vague, when I think it definitely shouldn't have been. Whatever plan they had for the big meeting was seemingly scrapped too, because the moment you meet Laguna is overwhelmingly casual. It seems like not only there was a previously planned better intertwining of these stories, but Laguna also initially was a bigger part of the story and was just as much of a main character as Squall was, which honestly makes the fact that he's in the city make a lot more sense. That was always weird to me, but he may have felt like a more important character to the creators if that was the case early on in development. The game's director mentions in an interview during game development that the way the two characters come together and meet is key and very important. And then in an interview shortly after the release of the game, he talks about what we mentioned earlier, where he says the idea of how that their stories would tie together got dropped and forgotten entirely somewhere along the way. And then in a 2019 interview, in tandem with the release of the remaster, he says he honestly can't remember what they cut. And in the end, he ended up being a much, much smaller character than he was initially planned on being. He also says that the dance party and the parade are the quote-unquote highlights, which is interesting because they're both in Disc 1, which perhaps betrays a front-heavy focusing of the effort. Alongside this, we have Kazushige Nojima, the lead scenario writer, saying this, just listen, I need you to listen to this whole thing. He says, "One challenge for me with writing the story was that I would sometimes write scenes rather casually, but the test players would really get into it and read into things I never intended. They gave me their feedback about once a week, and I'd hear things like, oh, what was going on there? And I can't wait to see how that mystery unfolds." And I'm just like, I hadn't thought about it that deeply. I mean, part of the fun of being a writer is seeing other people's responses to your work that you didn't predict, but sometimes I'd write things that threatened to elicit these huge misunderstandings, and I'd wish I hadn't written anything in the first place. This is a lot to unpack. It explains a lot that he didn't necessarily mean for a lot of the stuff that ended up in there to have the implications that it did. An example of this in real time is how in the interview they gave during production, they say that Squall's scar is quite important and he doesn't have it at the beginning, it happens in the game. In Final Fantasy VIII proper, it happens in the beginning. It happens in the opening cutscene during a training match with Cypher gone too far. It's not really plot important, it does demonstrate the level of perhaps over-the-top rivalry the two have with each other. Aside from that, it arguably doesn't even happen during the game, as it's in the opening cutscene, and it doesn't really come up very often during the game proper, nor does it really have any kind of ramifications on really anything. There was also an answer in here that I found interesting where their chief graphic designer was talking about how Final Fantasy VIII has more map screens than Final Fantasy VII, and it's partly because of just like camera work stuff with their new approach to 3D, but also that they got very ambitious during development and would just be like, oh, let's add this, oh, let's add that, and they just kept adding stuff until, in their own words, it got out of control. It's worth mentioning too that Final Fantasy VIII's section in Ultimania Archive is way thinner than 7 or 9's, the other games included in the same volume, and this may or may not be indicative of the way they just kind of had this by the seat of their pants approach to production and just added whatever when they felt like it. There's some noticeable absences in some of the sections as well, like certain characters don't even have concept art. From the sounds of some of these interviews, it gives off the impression that a lot of the team was just freestyling and adding stuff, which did result in several cool things, but also means there's a lot of disjointed parts and borderline incoherent messaging. This do-whatever approach to a development pipeline likely led to a lot of the game's issues with a lack of focus and clarity. I've mentioned this intermittently already, but I love Squall so bad it's not even funny. Like, that's my guy. It's true that he follows the same archetype as Cloud as a character, but they are different enough that I can get around that pretty easily.
That's really different to me.
The same thing, so we can't really single Squall out here. I really like Noctis too, though. Side note, but whoever was naming those guys was like cooking. Squall benefits from having an inner monologue that the player can see, which is very helpful.
Because they don't have back of the quote counter names, that's why.
No facial animations outside of cutscenes.
No Alex, no Liam.
She's really charming, but there are one or two scenes.
No Ben.
What the hell, girl?
No James.
What the hell, girl?
No Thomas.
We're following your orders. Why are you making fun of us? I find her a good foil to Squall. I like their dynamic, but I don't find her as compelling as Squall, as I just don't think she has as interesting of an arc in terms of execution. Hers being about growing up a bit and his being more about letting other people in. I think the way that his is executed is a bit more emotionally investing, while hers is a little bit more in the background. I guess another character that is relatively important and comes up frequently in the game is Cypher. Still not sure what his fucking problem was. I get that he's sort of got like a hero thing happening and he's obsessed with fictional heroes and spirals, but the concept of like he kidnapped the president because he was upset that Seed sent you on a suicide mission, the logic doesn't quite track for me. He like made it worse because he was upset that we got sent on an unfair mission. The sort of obsession he has with fictional heroes and being a knight is actually quite interesting, I think, but it's not elaborated on in a lot of depth in the game proper, and I wish we'd gotten a little bit more, because what they do have there and what they do put forward for his character, I think, is genuinely very interesting. Laguna and his squad, their presence in the game was cut down to an extent that I routinely forget about them. Like, they genuinely don't strike me as a very important part of the story, but obviously they were at some point, right, because half of the end cutscene is dedicated to them. I'm going to compare it to 7 once again and mention that it does not have the same strength in characters the way 7 does. Every character in 7 is pretty solid at least, and in 8, it's hit or miss. It's a fundamentally different story in the way that it has a much greater emphasis on the dynamic between 2 characters than a wider party, so it makes sense that the 2 leads are noticeably more complex and interesting people than the rest of the party because they get way more time devoted to them, and that was intentional. At the same time, the rest of the party sure could have used a little love. Zell especially is like actually quite charming at times. He's the token idiot boy, but he's surprisingly composed and practical during the first mission, which isn't what you'd expect, and it makes him feel a little bit more like a real guy who's somewhat serious about his job than a caricature. Selfie to an extent as well, despite being introduced even earlier.
A la madre.
Be there.
Ay, ay, ay.
Is a little more interesting with his
I'm
sort
so
of character
bad.
they established early on and his very distinct design, but just at first, he's kind of just there, just like Selfie after a while. Quistis and Irvine suffer the most from being left by the wayside a little, in the sense that they feel a little more along for the ride than important to the story, the way other party members do. And even then, Zell and Selfie only get little moments of character here and there, it's still pretty sparse. Selphie gets a moment to lead the missile sabotage mission about halfway through the game and visit Trabia, her home garden. Irvine gets ignored pretty frequently, but every time he does come up again, it's because he's making hard eyes at Selphie or reminding everybody about the orphanage, which he only does like twice. Squall and Renoa are obviously the most important, but the party still does have things to do in the story and motivations, and they feel sort of involved. The issue is, despite the things they are given to do, none of them are very interesting characters. Of the four, Quistis is the only one I found remotely interesting as a person, and she gets the least to do out of anyone. Selphie has a bit more to do than Zell, but Zell has more of a developed personality than Selphie. Quistis, like I said, gets mega sidelined in the middle of the game, and she doesn't get to do anything at all, really. And Irvine has some pretty inconsistent characterization, like leaving us in jail despite remembering the orphan gang. Plus, you could probably replace him with a cardboard cutout that sometimes spouts a line about liking Selphie after disc 2, and no one would notice. I also want to have a slightly more arbitrary but still fun section here to talk about the character design / fashion, because this is a Final Fantasy game. In terms of character design, I think they nailed Squall and Renoa. It's pretty obvious they were the focus, and that makes sense. Quistis' design, as I mentioned earlier, I also find to be very good. Irvine, Quistis, and Selphie all share a very similar color palette, which gives them a nice cohesion. Together with Squall and Renoa, they all look like they're from the same world, while still allowing Squall and Renoa to stand out a bit by giving them a slightly more cool-toned color palette. There is the slight problem, however, of the fact that these guys look kind of like they belong to the same world and are relatively normal-looking as far as Final Fantasy characters go, while certain other characters kind of fall short of the same design quality while also looking way more insane than them. Zell and Kiros come to mind as the most out of place. When it comes to the Witch and Sorceress designs, I keep going back and forth on them. I really like Ultimisia's design. I'm lukewarm on Adele's. Adia, her design is so awesome, and then she has like a snail headdress that I just like cannot fathom. And I think
I love that. I love that. The headdress is so good.
Being so different looking from the rest of
You just don't like it because it looks weird, but it looks cool, different, unique.
Whatever culture and
Wonder what
identity they've developed amongst themselves would be isolated from the rest of this world. That works. The fact that Zell looks like that doesn't. I'm sorry. Shout out to him. I'm sorry. It's the jacket. It's not even the jorts. It's the jacket. I just cannot decide on the jorts, man. Like, I freak with the jorts in kind of a 90s way, but I do not freak with that jacket. Just the silhouette of the jacket. It distracts from the statement silhouette of the jort. Do you get what I mean? In conclusion, this game is weird and insane in both its gameplay mechanics and its story. And you know what?
Oh, you know,
I like it
Dubs.
anyway. I can't deny a lot of the flaws the game has, and it's always suffered from being compared to 7, but it's one of those games that I think just kind of works anyway somehow. I know it may be hard to believe given the hour I just spent complaining about it, but Final Fantasy VIII is genuinely one of my favorite games ever. It's a deeply charming game, something of a flawed masterpiece. I have so much to say about it, obviously, and plenty of
Flawed
criticism, and yet I still
masterpiece,
find myself loving it
the
despite some
worst
parts, like, genuinely
fucking
think
word
truly
ever.
It has a lot of character and personality, and I'm aware that that's a super vague thing to say, but I mean it. Like I said, it has this adventurous, summery, nostalgic charm to me, and it has so much heart that even if it doesn't make sense some of the time, that I just can't help but like it. If I were to try and be extremely objective about this, I might give it a much lower score, whatever that's worth. I'm not really big on out of 10 scores anyway, but for the sake of brevity and clarity, right? If I was trying to be extremely objective, I might give it something lower than a 7 out of 10, but I just love something about this game so much that I just can't help it. There's something just...
What the fuck is objective about rating art? You set the metrics that you want to observe. They're based on your own personal experiences and biases. You know, that's what media criticism is. I don't want and it's impossible to do because you're always a product of your time, and so you're going to see things. It's why history is so interesting, because depending on different time periods, you're gonna get actually really different takes, and it takes fucking centuries for people to notice particular things. Yeah, I'm good, man. Objective criticism, the myth of objective criticism. If you like something, there are reasons why you like something, and the reasons why you are able to overlook particular things. Is that not something I'm describing as an objective fact about the game? Yeah, it's an objective fact. I'm full in subjectivist. That doesn't mean that there are universal principles that people are going to like, but not all people like them. It's not popularity. Objective does not mean popularity. What the fuck are you doing inside? Objectivity is not a popularity contest. A la Game of Thrones. I.e. Game of Thrones. Who the fuck knows what a la means? I thought that's what I meant. That show was horrible for a very long time, and yet people dickrolled it because they were told it was good. That's my philosophy behind it. My hypothesis behind it is that people were told it was good, and so people watched it by the people that actually knew why it was good, and then the people that knew why it was good started hating on the show, and it took a while for the normies to start hating on the show. But when people tell me, oh, season 8 sucked, I know you're an NPC that is fucking retarded and there's nothing interesting to say about the show. Because it absolutely was bad since season 5. It sucked. It was horrible. It sucked. Indefensibly bad. I don't care about you. I don't care about the good moments that existed in season 5, blah blah blah. They ruined the core of the show, which was Tyrion. So much screen time. They ruined Tyrion's character in season 5. They made Littlefinger retarded. How'd you have the He was the best character in the show, I think. He was there since season 1. The best character, Tywin, is gone. So is Oberyn. Yeah, that show sucked. Past season 4. I can't even rewatch past season 4. I'd never do it. Why would I do it? It sucks. All the bad things about the show happened to season 5. It's actually not true.
Kind of really special about Final Fantasy VIII that I can't put my finger on even after talking your ear off.
Just what, you had him in solitary confinement? He breached containment? What? That can't be good for you. Why did he drive from inside the building? What is this, fucking Napoleon? You're the one bothered. Ooh, wait, zipper on the pants? Is he wearing tearaway pants, do you think? God, I hope so. It's kind of crazy that he's talking shit on us when I defeated him by failing the gunblade prompt 9 times in a row. And he's calling me pathetic. Bitch, you lost to a loser. Me. What is that? Wait, go back. What the fuck was that?
How did you hit me?
Dog on my watch. I won, for your information, and then I lost in the cutscene. That's different. Whoa! I don't remember that trick. Wait outside. We're in an labyrinth alien spaceship. You should just find the door. Bye. I guess you know your way out. Good thing they put the text on the bottom because I cannot read this. What? Oh, why wouldn't you tell me that at the beginning? So says.
I got scared, okay.
Look at right, so like here's so annoying, right? So affirmation, compliments, expressive, gazing, palming. Palming is like using your palms, okay? What you do with your lips, whether you shrug, whether you're teasing, whether you're leaning towards someone, whether you're crossing your legs, whether you shake your head in a conversation, what's your pitch, okay? And so these are all the things that people look at, and then they analyzed all of these behaviors in different flirting styles. And what they found is that some flirting styles, some people do a lot of this, and some people don't do a lot of this. So the physical communication style or flirting style is just using your body to flirt. Okay? So it's like, doing things like squishing your breasts together if you're a woman or a man, and that, that's what turns you on. Or that's what turns women on. There's whatever. Okay? Then there's a sincere flirting style, which is marked by a desire to create an emotional bond with a potential romantic partner. Okay? So this is like, a sincere flirting style involves less fidgeting, less fidgeting, less teasing, less distraction, more smiling, staying tuned in, leaning forward, emphasizes genuine. I'm going to actually just write these out instead of showing you guys. I think it's going to be better. So let's compare and contrast. We're going to do it Dr. K's chart. Okay?
Oh, God.
So, physical style.
Oh, God.
Okay, so indicate interest with body. Okay? So this involves motion, leaning in, facial expression. Okay? So physical proximity is also big. Right? So I remember when I went on an early date with my wife. And we were sitting at a booth. And so, I like had her sit first. I was like, go ahead and sit. I motioned with my hand. So she sat on one side of the booth, and then I sat on the other side of the booth. And then she got up. She expressed dissatisfaction with my choice, and then she got up and she moved around to my side of the booth. And I was like, okay. Read anything.
I know this.
Not Charlotte Bronte. Dude, who's the... Oh. Jane Austen. I can't believe that. I love Jane Austen. Okay. So Jane Austen is a great example. People in my office, and I've seen them coming in as virgins, and then 2 years later, they're in a healthy relationship. I've seen success many times.
I've had all of this.
So the short-term relationship is fine, doesn't require a whole lot of flirtation. I've seen this as a psychiatrist before. Sometimes people who have BPD or struggling with addiction or antisocial or narcissistic or super depressed, or even have an anxious attachment style, they're just looking to get some needs met.
Oh, Insta.
I'm not saying it's always healthy, but I'm not placing a moral judgment on that. What I'm talking about, remember, we're talking about flirting here. We're talking about what are the things to do or not do when you are engaging with someone to keep and cultivate their interest in you. And lack of exclusive interest is a big no-no. Next. Vulgar vocabulary.
I've heard all this.
Right? Haha, I'm sure you're joking. And then he doubles down. And then she's like, hey, I don't think you're really understanding. So she's giving multiple exits for the guy, and he's not taking them. Right? But this is what, I like this example. I mean, it's kind of scary, but I like this example because a lot of people think that if you were attractive, you use dog walking strat, which you chat figured out, right? Use dog walking strat. Oh, hey, if you want to pick up chicks, just walk your dog. And that's a good way. The reason that dog walking strat is so strong is it gives you an opportunity for interaction with plausible deniability and no pressure.
Hell. Die.
That's why it's so strong. It's such a great strat. But the moment that this guy crosses over into pushiness, it's a deal breaker. And I was preparing this lecture, and 3 days ago, this TikTok comes across my feed. Right? It's such a great example of a dude who's checking all of the boxes. And then this engages in this deal breaker. And I've seen this time and time and time again. Even when it comes to successful relationships, the people who do this well are the people who end up in relationships. And the people who do it poorly are the ones who end up getting canceled on 15 minutes ahead of time because they're not respecting someone's boundaries. And this is what I sort of don't like about boundaries for a second. Because we'll say this person didn't respect your boundaries. Yes, that's correct. But the whole point of this lecture is that it is way more than that. Right? Because there are women who are going to be or dudes who are going to be this way. We're going to be
attention to me tonight. I'm so fucking sick of this shit. Oh my god. Touch a boob, buy a drink. I mean, it's very fucking simple.
Right? And so then the problem is, okay, on the one hand, you have people like this, and then on the other hand, you have people like that. So how do you know what to do? Flirting is literally, everyone's trying to ask the question, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Flirting is literally a skill set of diagnosis and intervention. You don't know, there isn't a rule for what to do. I mean, I've laid out the rules as best as I think we can. I'm sure that someone can do better, but whatever. Right? That's the whole point, is that flirting, knowing what to do is not something you learn from a video. It is something you learn from a person. And there's a skill set of ways to engage with that. It's about play. It's about potential space. It is about, hey, I don't know what this is, and that's not a problem. That is a potential. That's what flirting's about. Questions? We're going to post, let's post Slido links. We're going to take questions. And then let me see if I can... Okay. Okay. while we are doing that, so let's post. I'm gonna post. Did we get Slido links? So we'll do Q&A, okay?
Oh my god, I didn't even get to do the thing. Why are you
thank you, Miss
gathering
Panda.
around me?
Thank you, Crow. Dude, mod's coming in big in chat. And then. Okay. So we're gonna have. Hey, hold on 1 second. Let me just switch your output.
Q&A or now?
No, we're gonna populate Q&A. and we're
Oh
gonna
my
do it while we're
god! I hate
while
round
we're waiting for questions to be
17!
cleared. So y'all can check out the Slido.
I
Can you hear me
needed
okay?
so badly.
Cool. I can't hear you on Discord, by the way.
Oh, you can't hear me on Discord. Okay. Weird. Wait, that's
Hi,
maybe
chat.
maybe on your end. I see myself transmitting on Discord. Testing.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, I think it's you.
Hold on. Oh yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
So while we're waiting for things to populate, we are going to look at a couple of things. Okay, hold on. We have something to show y'all. And Kabir is... Tech Teller is going to help us out. So, Tech Teller, what have you been working on, bro?
Yeah. So wanted to show you some stuff. Hey chat, wanted to show y'all stuff as well. I'm just gonna pull up chat so I can see them. Okay. Let's see. You can show my screen, right?
No, I'm showing. I'm driving. Do you want me to show?
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Can you share your screen to me?
Yes.
Well, I have something to show. Hold on. I think you should show this.
Bro. Hold on.
Yeah. Well, leaked. Okay, we skipped ahead. That's fine.
Oh, yeah, that I can show, but...
Yeah.
Hold on.
Go for it.
Hold on, chat. Okay. All right. Okay. Go ahead. Leaked. Go ahead,
Okay.
Tech Teller.
Leaked. Hey, yeah, so actually, can you share? Because I don't know what
Oh,
people
wait,
are
wait.
saying. Can you show me?
Dude, Tech Teller is so high maintenance, chat.
I know, right?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so chat, we're trying something new. If you can go to the next slide. We have a really good problem, which is that y'all have lots of questions and we have lots of answers. We literally have
Wait, what is F?
6 years worth.
F?
Huh? F?
AI killed the stream? Are we no longer streaming?
Oh, share. Yeah, you should start, I think.
Are we back? Wait, no. I think it's chopped. Oh, no, it's not. Frozen super choppy.
Yeah.
Back. Okay, so far so good. Starter is frozen. Try refreshing.
Yeah, I'm seeing stutter too.
Okay, I'm gonna just drop this call and see if I can fix stream.
Yep.
Okay. This problem recently? I wonder if it's Discord. I wonder if it's not liking Discord. Back? Are we back? Good now. Yeah, I think it's Discord. Okay, that's really interesting. We just figured it out. Because we had this problem last time too. Okay, so I'm gonna just go through this. So we have a good problem, which is that there's a lot of questions, and we have a lot of answers. So we get this all the time, where like we just get the same questions over and over and over again, and we have over I think 1,000 videos on our YouTube channel now. And a lot of people will ask questions to AI. Okay. Yeah, 32% of people using AI tools at least once a week in a typical week for mental health support.
Jesus.
So,
That dumb.
extended daily interactions with AI chatbots can reinforce negative psychosocial outcomes such as decreased socialization. AIs can be sycophantic. We can become dependent on them. When responses match a user's views, they're more likely to be preferred by both humans and preference models, even when wrong. So the AI is biased towards telling you what you want to hear as opposed to telling you what's correct. And AIs offer pretty untailored advice. I know many of them will tailor things to what you say, but they'll always sort of be sycophantic. And they basically have a shared knowledge base, right? So they may tailor things to you in a sycophantic way, but their knowledge base is basically shared. And by the way, I guess we had this understanding the perception of online video platforms on mental health literacy, a comparison of Healthy Gamer GG and APA YouTube channels. Okay, so we have an AI, okay? So what it is a way to sequence HE content to your specific question, pull out the most relevant learnings from thousands of hours of content, and then it's basically trained off of our transcripts. It's not a therapist, coach, or crisis service, okay? So it's about finding specific information that you need, searches across, hold on a second. Let's see if I can do this. Nope. Got it this way. So basically, it's going to find the information to answer your question. Okay? So, and it has limited follow-up questions and interactions to reduce sycophancy and dependence, but it basically searches our content. And then, hold on, let me see. Where's our... Okay, let's take a look. So I'm going to ask, we're going to just pick a couple
I'm having a
questions, okay,
points
while we're waiting for this.
issue.
So I noticed, so let's ask about the difference between yoga and tantra. Let's see. Okay, and while we're doing this, let's see. Oh, the build in public. Whoops. This is our, whoops. This is the overlay I should be using. Okay, so, so this is like based on, you know, what we talked about. So, and then it has sources and specific timestamps. Okay. Yeah, let's see. Can you explain the puer aeternus meditative approach? Right. So if you ask this, I encourage y'all to ask these questions to like Claude or ChatGPT and look at the Gemini, DeepSeek, take your pick. Right. So let's see if it can figure out some of this stuff in its thinking. Did we break it? Let's see. Oh, so questions are in slides. Okay. Right, so, like, this is sweet, y'all. Right, so avoids dreary work, focuses on the psychological principle that unrealized potential is not neutral.
Have to go
If
that
potential is
way.
not
The
manifested in
pathing
reality,
is
it transmutes
so
into
bad.
toxicity, such as addiction, dopamine chasing, or unhealthy lifestyle. To counter this, Dr. K suggests a specific meditative strategy. Hell yeah, dude. Let's go. Right, so this is great. Let's look at, there are other questions. Can you give me some...
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. New chat. Okay. So basically, this is a way for y'all to ask questions and then, you know, get an indexed version of what we advocate for here at HG. It's an alpha. Right, so we build stuff. And by the way, so, you know, like this is a good example of something that when you guys support us financially, like this is what we do with the money. Okay, so to be productive when you're depressed, you need to shift your understanding of how productivity works. In a depressed state, your brain's behavioral inhibition system is hyperactive, making you physically and mentally stuck.
How dare you?
Action leads to hope, not vice versa.
Who are you?
Focus on unrelated small
Who even
wins, prepare
touched
for
me?
mental punishment. Like, so a paradox of depression is that when you finally do something productive, your mind often punishes you for it. You might think, I only did one dish, I still have 20 more, or I should have done this weeks ago. Right, so be prepared for this stuff. And then here's timestamps from all of our resources. Okay? It is an alpha. This is what we are building for y'all, amongst other things. Okay? And, yeah, let's see, let me see. Okay, let me check in with, I gotta just do something real quick, chat. Man, I'm juggling so many things. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna turn to Slido. And, you know, by the way, so we do have, this is great. So thank you guys, by the way, it looks like we've had about 20 sales over the course of this. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. If y'all are interested, so if you guys like today's lecture, y'all should definitely check out the guide. So the lecture is actually a bigger version of what we have in the guide. The guide is designed to be
Did you see that?
the highest, most
Evasion.
important points with a sufficient amount of nuance.
Is it Doc that zombie?
And then
I'm a warrior.
Covers a lot of stuff.
I know the mechanics of this video game.
So if you guys are kind of thinking,
No,
okay,
you
what
can
happens
do
after
that.
flirting? What's the right way to express sexual interest? Right, all those kinds of things is what we are try to answer in the guide, giving you solid evidence-based perspectives. Even though the video on flirting, we didn't talk about this much, but so the other thing about the guide is it's designed to be useful for everybody at every stage of the relationship, which is what made it challenging to make, but I think we did it. So you may ask, like, okay, what's the point of flirting if I'm already in a committed relationship? And that's where we get to things like dead bedroom. Right, so when this intimacy is missing, when this vibrancy is missing, when you're tuned out, when you are burnt out, when you're not giving someone your exclusive attention because you're playing WoW for 24 hours a week. There was a post about this a couple days ago on our subreddit. That's what leads to the loss of intimacy. And there are things like, you know, people will talk about love languages, but love languages is a useful framework, but it's not based on research. I don't know if you guys like know that. But it was basically, I think, a pastor who did a lot of like couples work, and it was what he sort of learned from his personal work. Which, I mean, I think it's a good framework. I think it's not, you know, it's not bad, but it's not evidence-based. And so we try to include a lot of things. Not
This is
just
what I'm
about-
talking about. Why did I not zip?
Highlight this.
Pussy.
Hold on a second. I'm having trouble logging into something. Sorry. Okay, we'll get Slido questions real soon. So we still have a $5 pre-order, by the way. So basically, we try to figure out all of the steps of the relationship, give you all solid evidence-based perspectives. You know, we go into a lot of these things about why dating is hard, and once we understand why it's hard, okay, exclusive interest is one of the 3 major deal breakers for flirtation. And the standard has become lack of exclusive interest. So how do you navigate that? At the beginning, you have to know that, right? And so this is where it's like, if you were to ask me, okay, Dr. K, how do I navigate that? When you are texting someone, you express a lot of interest in their personhood, even if you're texting other people. If you're texting other people, instead of using it as a defensive ego kind of move of like, yeah, like I'm not super
I should stop playing the game. I've been playing it for 3 hours. I didn't even know that. I've been playing
But
like
you may ask
shit.
someone, hey, are you texting other people? What is that? That's an expression of, hey, what's the exclusivity